We are not up yet.
Oh,
We're still
we
not
up?
up. Now we're live.
Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to the 12th episode of the third season of Second Sons. Can you all hear me? As always, I'm Roy Rogers of the currently of the Philadelphia Meta, previously of the New York City Meta. With me today, as always, is Aaron Glazer, who does not get to talk in this segment, and we are joined today by almost the entire crew of the usual Second Sons crew. Buzz is still asleep or watching the World Cup. I don't know what young, handsome Swedes do in the summer, but they definitely aren't on Second Sons episodes. But who is on Second Sons today is the North American champion of my heart, Chris Schoenthal. How you doing today, Chris?
Pretty tired. It's the season is upon us when my hours at work get longer and people get angrier about not getting tickets to the greatest show on earth. But
soon, though,
hanging in there.
Right?
The Radio City Music Hall Christmas
3 or 4 weeks,
Spectacular?
right?
It's 3 weeks from tomorrow is preview night.
All right, and then the only man who would miss his own regional when half of the attendees of the regional are staying at his house is Sandy. I flew to Vegas on the wrong weekend, Barnabas. How you doing today, Sandy? It was nice not to see you this past weekend. Like there was this gaping sandy-shaped hole in our lives at Dance with Dragons 3, and it could not be filled. By we tried to shove 2 Canadians into the hole, and it didn't work.
Well,
So, how you doing,
really,
Are
one's a
we
lot
not
better.
doing phrasing anymore?
No, we're not.
I actually have a bone to pick with all the people that stayed at my place because I had exactly the same amount of alcohol when I came back. I thought they would at least drink my beer
Way
Todd
too polite.
apparently brought some of his own beer, and he and Joe
and then drank that,
were drinking
which
it.
is
Yeah.
fine. But yeah.
Did you stock it for them? Did you like?
No, but I had some decent beer.
Oh,
I
all
had
right, all right.
Kentucky bourbon barrel stout.
Sandy's
And,
hurt. He's hurt.
I was looking forward to drinking your scotch, but shit happens.
And
Yeah.
that extra voice there that you hear, the masculine voice there, is our Bud replacement. Buzz. There we go.
Bud.
Replacement.
Bud
That
replacement.
almost went the whole segment without me screwing something up. Our Buzz replacement, Sid. How you doing today, Sid?
I'm
enjoying summer with
great.
this fresh cut.
Yeah, I'm on production duty, and I live in the bizarro world compared to Chris. This is not the season. This is the season where I do very little, but produce Second Sons episodes apparently, and hang out with kids and chill. And so I've just gotten kind of into my summer gear. I think the school year is kind of worn off of me. I'm enjoying it.
And we are joined by our special guest today. We have upgraded our cast because before we had the inferior Thompson on our show a couple of times,
True.
Chris, but now we have the first American to win a Road to Stolic event, former, flag bearer into Stolic last year, the best Thompson, Jess Thompson. How you doing today, Jess?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
We're very happy to finally have you on. And again, I'm definitely, because I know CT is probably watching this or will watch this, definitely saying we traded up this time. Traded up.
Make
All
no
right,
mistake.
Very clear. No mistake. All right. So lots of stuff has happened since our last episode, namely that regional season has kicked into high gear. It feels like 50 million regionals have happened. And we're going to talk a little bit about the regional meta, but I want to first congratulate the 2 regional champions that I'm aware of because I'm very selfish and American-centric, which is Nick Hansen, who won out in the first White Squirrel Open, or whatever Jesse is calling it.
Boo.
Which is congratulations, Nick Hansen. Good to see
Hey,
Nick.
what'd he win with?
Barra Wars. Was it Barra Wars to come or Barra Faith Bellaton?
It was Barrel Wars.
Barra Wars. Okay, yeah.
I
he
think
won
it was
with,
the same deck he was playing at Kubla, or close to the same deck.
It is.
Yeah. I think it was very similar.
Oh, Kubla, my mistake.
Kubla.
You
Yeah.
said war.
Which is Jesse
No
Finch.
way. That'd be cheating.
No.
Once again, someone else wins a title with a deck that Jesse built, whose name is not Jesse Carpenter. So then also back on the East Coast, we had Xavier win.
What's his last name? Say it.
I'm not going to say his name, his last name, because I
Father?
can't pronounce it.
I'm
Yes.
gonna go with Schoenthal. His last name is now
Schoenthal.
Schoenthal. Xavier Schoenthal.
And he won playing Barra Wars to Come against Ryan Smith who was playing Tyrell. Tyrell, it was a Tyrell mirror, not Barra. Tyrell, mirror match in the final, which was streamed. Because we were able to get a stream this year for Dance Dragons 3, which is a huge success. One of the bigger regionals that's happened this year in the United States, making me a very happy man. I appreciate everyone who came down. It was a really good time. The only thing that didn't go correctly was Sandy wasn't there, which I'm just going to keep harping on.
Also, the karaoke was very disappointing.
Oh,
Yeah,
Sandy,
I think
I take no responsibility for that. That's one of the
New Nemo is not a thing where you have
Yeah, I went there once and it was garbage. And
Yeah,
I
why
was
didn't
trying
you
to tell you
that
that.
in advance? You did
No,
not.
'cause
You
I didn't
never
think
mentioned
I
that
didn't-
once.
I said I went to a place.
This is we're gonna, as we say at work, take that conversation offline. No one cares about that. 'Cause
How many people did you have at the regional itself, Roy?
We had 28,
Nice.
29 with me, but I didn't play because we'll get to that.
Out here we had another regional though, unless you had another one on your list, right? We had the Portland regional that Chris was at.
Out here? How's that out here?
Oh,
in
we
California?
had an
I
episode
think
after
we've
that.
had a cast since then.
Have we?
Maybe we didn't. But Chris,
Maybe,
I don't
maybe
think
Steve
so.
wasn't on because
Yeah, I feel like
just
we-
cuts
or
cats
maybe-
lately.
We talked about Alex Black winning.
Yeah, sure did.
congratulations.
dang.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
well,
I
no.
forgot. Oh yeah, that's
Drama
right.
around
The
that.
drama. That was 2 weeks ago. Dang. Dang.
Hey,
Why do I
Time
think?
flies, folks.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of the Seattle regional, the faux regional. That's what I'm thinking
Oh, the
of.
four-person.
Seattle won. Did that
No, they got
Seattle-
6. They ended up with 6.
and I have a message to Alex Black in relation to this.
No,
Alex
he
Black,
did
do not quit the game, but do not quit the wars to come, so we don't have to see your face ever again. Oh my God.
Now, Alex, he and someone else showed up not late, but I think
Yeah.
kind of last minute to make it 6 people. But
So,
yeah,
So the quick story there is that there is a regional later in Seattle as well, but there was a replacement regional put on by Cascade Games, who does all of FHE's other games, at their pseudo ETX replacement where Netrunner Nationals was. They 6 players and apparently decided not to charge for it, but also not to give out the buy that went with it. But the players get all the swag. So
Lame.
Motley cards and their tokens and stuff. So that happened. So congratulations to one. Fine.
All right. I do want-
Didn't Dustin Archer win a regional?
Who did win a 4-person?
a 4-person
four-person.
regional. I'm not sure they followed the same rules though for the 4-person regional.
so I have
All I know
two
is Team
questions.
Stark got another win.
Oh no.
I have 2 questions for you all, but there's one final point I want to say. I want to actually give props to Ryan Ritter and the rest of the graphic design / like prize support people at OP, because the regional prizes this year are excellent. Everyone was really, really happy at our event with them. Like, people were really like, I want that mat. I want those
Yeah, that-
hot cards. Like, it was the
Playmat
most
is
excited
awesome.
people have been for an FFG kit in a while. So I'm Ryan and we should praise OP when they do the things right, and making the regionals kit this year, they definitely
Oh,
knocked it.
shit.
Absolutely, very good. Kid.
Sandy, did you post the favorite forecast character thing?
No, I didn't post that. That was posted like
just-
3 weeks
It
ago
just
or
got
something.
bumped. It just
All
got
right.
bumped. Don't worry about it.
So,
I guess I should pull that.
okay,
Well, we're not
question
doing
number
that
one,
this week. Alright.
Question number 1. Unless you are at the White Squirrel Open or in New York City, regionals in general have been on a decline this year. I mean, even like we had 49 last year for Dance Dragons 2, and we were down to we lost 20 people basically. So regionals across North America are down. Actually, I even think they're down a little bit in Europe. Just looking at the numbers overall. I mean, just look at Spanish Nats this past year as well, which much lower than it has been in the past. So what do we think explains that? Before we get to the meta, what do we think explains the decline?
Natural. I mean, being real honest, like it's people will say, "Oh, the game is dying because we dropped 50 to 30," but it's more just that it's leveling out. It's getting to the point where it probably belongs. It's not over popular because people are so excited about it, but it's not, a dead game by any means. So our numbers next year will be similar, but not significant more.
Oh, I don't think.
Unless
that's at all.
something happens between then.
I don't think that's it at all. I mean, I look at the numbers at things like War and Kubla. Like, I think that numbers are up, but people can't afford in America because it's so damn big to travel to, besides Sandy, to travel to every single event. And the sheer amount of different events. Why the fuck is Buzz in our chat? Sorry.
Classic Buzz.
He's like, I've got so much to do, I can't possibly be awake. Whatever. So, no, I think that people have a choice of what to travel to.
He's checking to make sure I didn't fuck up.
FFG puts out a subpar experience consistently, right? Like, they might have had nice prize support this time, but if you compare that to the prize support at literally anything any of us do, it's not that great. So, like, ultimately, if I could travel to, I don't know, Jesse War, Thrones War, New York War, if I could travel to Red Saturday, or if I can go to Kubla, or I can go to Random Regional X, I'm going to the fan run event. They're better run. There's more people that I like there, and they're more fun.
I'll also say the fan run events, like Buzz makes a point. Spanish Nationals was announced 1 month before. Regional announcements were late, and I agree with Roy that the prizes, I haven't been to a regional yet, they look great. They really do, and I'm excited to play for those, but the announcement came late, and that goodwill kind of just ekes away as we're all waiting for announcements. We're all looking to make summer plans, and then they finally hit, and it's then you start looking at your calendar, you're like, well, I can maybe make that one, maybe I can make that one, because all my other plans are set, whereas these community tournaments, you know, we announce them 6 months in advance, 9 months in advance, 3 to 4 months at least, like at the minimum. People want to get together for those events because they know the community is going to gather there. You don't always know the community is going to make it to a regional because we've been trained. We've been trained that the regionals are not as good as the community events.
I'd also say that in addition to being announced late, there's just so much overlap. Maybe not in exact dates, but just one after another and into this like 6 week, maybe 2 month period. Like, I was lucky enough to be able to go to 2, and then I'm going to go to my local one in San Diego, but they scheduled one in the Western region on top of Comic-Con. They scheduled a couple to Midwest on top of each other. I know there's 2 this weekend that are back to back basically, that Jay and a few other people are having to decide when they're going to, which is not healthy. Like, spread them out so people can go to both. There's no reason not to.
What do you think, Jess?
Yeah. They are back to back. Like, I know people are considering going to it's Louisville and Michigan regional, and Michigan always has a great turnout, and it's just more fun in general. But I know some people who are kind of hungry for wins who are going to Louisville instead. So
I think you mean I think you mean Louisville, not Louisville.
Louisville, whatever.
Sounds like my trip to Vegas.
So I want to go back though to Sid's point, which I think is actually to me one of the crucial ones. Just like talking to people who normally go to 2 or 3 regionals in our region, like they had already had settled plans by the time the regionals were announced. Like one of our local South Jersey players who comes to Philly events all the time was at Dance. He can't come to the Philly regional because it's his bachelor party that weekend, and he was like, well, I didn't know it was, you know, like there's just so much like scheduling mistakes because we couldn't like coordinate because FFG didn't announce it like at all. Basically regionals were starting and they were announced, and that's I think the most frustrating thing for this season. It feels like last year there was plenty of notice for regionals and we had higher attendance. So I think that fundamentally, I mean, there's a lot of good points in here, but I think to me the one that's the biggest, just talking with people now that I've been able to like host a regional, and even right before regional season started at Starpike, people were excited for regionals, but we didn't get the news until the last minute, and people's plans for the summer are already locked in. You know, you can't move a bachelor party, you can't move a family trip for a Thrones tournament unless your partner also plays Thrones, right? So, I mean, what are you supposed to do?
I agree with that. I think, Aaron, your face is not on stream, by the way.
He moved his camera. There you go. That's half a face.
There we go. That's about all we need.
Okay. No, I think that, like, I totally agree with the scheduling thing. I know for me, I've got every weekend booked until, I think, mid-September, and that's because I don't know where I'm going to go on September 22nd.
Are we really using your social calendar as a barometer, though?
That seems like no, I mean, like, what I'm
going to
saying
Bay
is,
of Crabs is where he's going.
Or if I'm in Seattle, I'll go to High Garden. Like it depends on which coast I'm in. But like I think like
Portland.
Seattle, dude.
And it's
I know, but
not
West Coast.
It's
in September.
NorCal.
Yeah, NorCal.
September
Yeah, it's in
22nd.
September 22nd, the same day as Bay of Crabs.
He said
I know what I'm talking
Seattle.
about.
He said Seattle.
If I'm on the West Coast, I will go.
Oh,
to
if
that
you're
one.
in Seattle, you'll pop down. Got it.
Yeah, and if I'm in London, I'll go to Barbara. Like that's my. I mean,
Sick
but
life,
my
bro.
point is,
Such a life, Sandy.
my point is that like exactly like you can't plan around regionals when there's travel involved, and it's a little easier for people who drive, I think, because like you drive if you're planning on driving 4 hours, like 4 hours to one city or 4 hours to another city, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But like for people that fly, like or that have families that they need to plan around, it's just totally untenable. And even once we got the schedule, it was like Chris said, the clumping of regionals, like there were like 3 on a weekend, and then there's like nothing near me, and then there's 3 on another weekend. Like I don't know. It just feels like it could be optimized a little better. It could be planned out a little ahead of time. I know stores requested regionals well before they were announced. I don't know what that process looks like, but I feel like there's probably room for some growth.
Well,
If anyone's
The stores also didn't get a say in the date, from what I'm told. I'm told the dates were very locked.
Because there's also events at the stores, right? Like, aren't there Magic?
Of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I don't know who is running that particular aspect, but I feel like there's some very low hanging fruit in terms of operational efficiency that they could take advantage of.
They are hiring someone, so
Yeah.
Well, they have to pay them more than like $15 an hour, I think.
yeah.
They want somebody
I don't think that's happening though. But
Can I suggest that this is in fact on purpose? That FFG calling these regionals is not accidental. They want the people that are in that region. Like the intent of these tournaments is not big travel. I don't believe FFG assumes that we're all willing to travel as much as like where we clearly are for Thrones, since we do for fan events. Like the assumption for regionals seems to be that like the people within that region go specifically, and like people outside, if they really want to make an effort, can, but like they generally do not. Oh, the meme is here.
I mean, but we don't have any idea. Like, you're talking about a philosophy, right? A philosophy of regionals. Like, that doesn't exist. They don't.
Right.
What are you talking about, man? Like,
I tried to give FFG credit for something.
you're like, their philosophy here is to serve a certain population.
I mean,
what?
But Aaron is probably theoretically closer than.
No, I think
If that's
Aaron's
happening,
right.
it's by act. It's not by
No,
intention.
I don't know. I don't know, Sid. Like, I think that there's a very clear influence on FFG from the board gaming community, and board gaming traditionally is very like local. And I think like maybe subconsciously or at the higher levels of FFG, they take those cues and they're like, okay, well, our community has always been lots of really tightly knit local players, so that's what we're going to do with this card game that we're launching. Even though that's not how any other card game works.
No,
And
it's
that
definitely
would
true.
not surprise me.
I mean, I feel like FFG expects it to be something closer to a variety of board games, while competitive Thrones players want something closer to Wizards Grand Prix circuit or the Star City Games circuit, like where people do travel for these Grand Prix, which they do service the local community, right? But they also, and you see maybe somewhere to 2/3 of the field be relative locals, but you also get an influx of travelers, right? And that's what we would want, but that's not necessarily what FFG wants.
That's what our fan run events are.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the scale of our game, of course, not
Right.
2,000 people. But yeah. But I think we should transition away from this because I do want to talk a little bit about where people think the meta are right now, or the meta is right now. So we're going to start with Jess, who I think has attended the most regionals of all of us. Jess, where do you think the regional meta is right now?
2 regionals is the most.
Of all of us. I've only been to 1.
I've been to
Played in 0.
Have I been to
Okay.
2 or have I been to 1?
Have I been to 2?
I've been to
Have you
0.
been to 2, Chris? Yeah. So.
God, like, the meta is just terrible. I don't know. I mean, it's not terrible, but it is terrible.
It is totally terrible. Say what you mean.
Like, it's just Tyrell Wars, Martell Wars, Lanny fucking Crossing, like...
Hey, another deck won that tournament.
I know, Barra won, which I think he was 3-2 in the Swiss. I'm not trying to discount Nick or anything.
Right, but he snuck in a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not that consistent of a deck. I mean, it can be, but yeah.
I think it's kind of, and like I know Daryl, who was playing Landy Crossing, had like crushed him in the Swiss, and then just happened in the final he had a terrible hand. So
The classic Landy Crossing.
Didn't see Tyrion's Chain.
I think he saw Tyrion's Chains. I think he just didn't see any characters.
With Birdmen.
So the
Tyrion's Chain and
whole
lots of
kneeling thing.
Three, 2 limited locations, 3 Birdmen. Yeah.
Can I just give a quick shout out here, real quick, to Aaron Groff, who's currently counter programming us with the
I saw that.
former Netrunner player who's doing videos now. I am very much looking forward to watching the video after, but Groff,
Yeah. Jeez.
where you at?
Stone cold, man. Stone cold.
He called me
People do think
today,
we're watching
and
over
I
this.
talked to him and I told him we were going online in an hour, and he didn't mention anything about his YouTube coaching session.
So
I was gonna
all right.
drive with him to nationals. What a traitor!
So
But,
anyone
okay,
else? Oh, go
The
ahead.
meta, like, in general, I feel like everyone expects there's going to be a lot more Targ than there actually is. At least in the Midwest, like, everyone who likes Targ is afraid of the mirror match, so they just don't bring it. And then we end up having only 1 or 2 Targ players at any event. And they always make the cut, so I don't know.
The mirror match does suck.
It does. But I mean,
Terrible,
just put some Isle of Ravens in there. You're fine.
I guess. Definitely. I mean, we had the same thing at dance, right? We definitely expected there to be more Targ than there was, and
Targ can't beat Terrell, man.
Yeah.
Not consistently.
Rough.
yeah, Tyrell definitely can pretty much hose Targ, unless Targ draws the nuts. So, anyone else want to throw anything in there?
Calahandra's about to ditch us.
I haven't played, but
Well,
I mean,
I played the 2 regionals, but only one of them counted because one of them was hashtag combo meta. So, and then the other one was hashtag everybody brought Martell Wars meta.
yeah.
I think
well,
the,
you mean that was also
the guy in the semifinals, Harrison Anderson, who's a super chill dude from San Francisco, made it to the semis, which is, I'm pretty sure, the best he's ever done in a tournament, and he was really proud of himself. But his jousting pavilion link is pretty because it's like wars to come, Martell Wars to come, Martell Wars to come,
Yeah.
Martell Wars to come, Martell Wars to come, Martell Wars to come.
it was 33% of the field at dance was Martell Wars to come.
I mean, I hear that,
Good.
it beats Martell Wars to come. Oh, Martell Alliance.
It does. Martell Alliance, Wolf, and Rose.
Until you get to the cut, at least.
No, he was
Well,
playing Tyrell.
That was against Tyrell. Okay.
And
Yeah, it's gonna have trouble against Terrell.
Yeah. I was
but
rooting for him.
But he beat Tyrell on the
so
Swiss.
Yeah, I watched him beat Tyrell
Played-
on stream.
He played 6 games that day, and literally all of them were against Martell Wars to come.
Yeah, Harrison. he like if he had won it all, he could have like possibly just played all games against. Like there was a chance for an entire regional to be played against one deck.
So, what I think is really interesting though is, despite the fact that Martell Wars to come is as I think even more present than Tyrell Wars to come, Tyrell Wars to come seems to be drawing a lot more of the fire, at least in the social media world. Why do we think that is?
This Terrell Wars to
Wama.
come is
I
better.
blame Wama.
Because it's better.
It's easy to play.
And it's better. Like, were we forgetting that Terrell Wars to come is better?
It is better.
Like, look, Martell Wars is fucking phenomenal and should be broken, right? Like, that deck is so good that it should not exist. And Terrell is still fucking better. That's absurd. Like, those 2 decks are so far and above the field, it's ridiculous.
I played a game where I was Tyrell Wars and Chris was Martell Wars, and he Valored me. Well, he Valor Morgulis me twice, then he Valor O'Harris me twice, and I still fucking won. So
Yeah.
Wrecked.
dumb.
So, I mean, look, ultimately, like, remember, I'm sure Schoenthal remembers this. Remember when the meta was Lanny Dragon and Stark Fealty? Does that seem familiar to anyone here? Like, we're basically in that meta again, except, like, I mean, I guess Lanny Crossing is running around.
If we can stay in that meta through Gen Con, I wouldn't mind.
Really, you? Huh. Oh, so you're just gonna take Lanny Dragon again? All right, Schoenthal's taking Terrell Wars. That was easy.
He beat me with Tyrell Wars to win the What did
They
you
did.
win?
It's a good
The
day.
SoCal
California
League?
League.
California
Yeah,
League?
California League. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll come back to in future episodes. We'll do a little bit more about the regionals as we get closer and closer to Gen Con. But we should probably jump into our second major topic.
Spoiler. Wait, guys. Spoiler. At the coming regionals, Terrell Wars and Martell Wars are going to win a lot of them. I would take them winning more than the field.
Okay.
Okay. So on that
Okay.
happy note,
Is that a bet?
They're gonna be the field
we're
though.
going to jump into the next major thing, which is that FFG did sort of a 1-2 punch announcement about the intro decks, which is that they spoiled the top half, I guess, of the intro decks. I don't know. Well, it's Lannister and
That is
Stark.
Stark-
which are gonna be
Stark
the
and
most
Bear
and
are
Targ,
the
right?
top half.
It's Lannister, Stark, Targ, and
Barrett.
No.
It's Lannister, Stark,
There's no
Greyjoy, and
Barrett,
Bear.
yeah.
Great choice.
That's hard.
so two of the
More like the bottom half and the
most
top
popular
half.
factions were spoiled. So for the general public, and so what do we think of the spoiled intro decks?
Well, do we want to start with the intro decks, or do we want to start with the kit?
I think we
Because
should start.
the
With,
intro decks. We're gonna go deck by deck, right? So
all right, we can
Yeah,
start
let's
with.
start with the kit.
All right, we'll start with the kit. So they also announced this kit that sort of provides support for 16 players, with up to each player being capable of earning 3 copies of each card based on these challenges. And these challenges can be as simple as buying an intro deck, which gets you 1 promo card.
Mhm.
Woo. All right, or more complicated for newer players, more complicated things like, setting up a large number of cards, standing Danny.
Very complicated to stand Danny.
Burning
Oh,
a
no,
character to
yeah.
0.
You may not know, so like I when I was teaching the game very regularly in the course I met up, people didn't know the Rhaegal, Viserion, Drogon synergy very well. They're like, it's not necessarily something that would come naturally to you. And so, just sort of learning to play the faction that you chose will give you additional of these alt art cards. And then, of course, if the mirror, there's also a mirrored side with more difficult things to do in games, at least supposedly, for more advanced players to earn these cards, like teaching a player how to play the game, and then more sort of advanced things. So designed, of course, to reward older players and newer players to come together. Mostly the older players are after these full bleed, very nice alt arts, and there's also faction cards for all the participants as well. So it's a pretty well supported kit. Any general sort of thoughts about how the kit works, though? I know Chris has
men
some
on horses, so Kevin's gonna want it.
I mean, I'm pretty excited about it in general. The full bleeds look really neat, and I think the program for it is cool too. It's kind of a natural progression and lets people just kind of jump into having a day for to celebrate these event decks, having a day to kind of rejuvenate the player base. The one downside, and of course with FFG there has to be a downside. There are 8 full bleed cards that you can earn, 1 for each faction, which is very cool, and they are all evergreen except 1. 7 of the 8 factions received a card that is either in the core set or in their house box. And Tyrell randomly received Knight of the Reach, who is from a chapter pack. So it will be rotating out.
Well, there aren't any good Tyrell cards in the core set or the box, so I can see why
in
they
the
would
core
pick
set,
a
you got a
thematic
good argument.
card. A thematic card like Knight of the Reach.
The box, I think they could have found some.
Could have found
they
some.
could-
They obviously could have
That was
sarcasm.
totally sarcasm. Come on. There's 8 million major Tyrell characters, and Knight of the Reach.
We went over
Well,
this.
I mean,
think,
they're
and
not-
posted on the
to be
wiki.
clear, they're
Terrell
not
has never had
major-
a chapter
Yeah, they're like
pack.
non-unique, kind of chuddy. Is like
Right.
the theme
They're
of
all
them.
just
I mean-
general utility guides, and some are better than others. Like Direwolf Pup and Braided Warrior don't see a ton of play, but like Lannisport Shipwright's great. Messenger Raven's a staple.
Lord.
Shadow City Bastards.
The Shadow City Bastard,
Yeah.
and it's Magali art, right? That's
Yeah, it's a really good looking show.
Yeah, Braided Warrior actually stood out to me as the one that I would never put in a deck ever.
Wait,
But
what
I
about your
love it.
Dothraki deck?
And I
Come
don't
on.
run it. I don't run it. He's
He
garbage.
doesn't even make the cut for that deck.
No, there's a 3 cost that's just straight up better.
It's true.
Yeah, and they went with non-unique characters, which was also, I think, an interesting decision to make for new players. Wouldn't you necessarily pick like a famous character from each faction and that's like evergreen and slap them on these promo
Maybe,
cards.
but so the thing about that, and I'll push back a little bit on that point, is that these characters are going to go in the decks for those factions at least some percentage of the time. Maybe not all of them, like you said. Braided Warrior is kind of a miss.
Direwolf pup.
But they're sure. But I mean, when Direwolves become a thing, like when Direwolves become Tricons somehow, that'll be a thing. But they're all characters you want 3 of, and they're not going to get easily and obviously replaced down the line. Like if you put Core Titan as the Lannister card, version, I miss these cards I got. So I think the utility idea is actually better than unique.
So
they clearly have big uniques on the faction cards, since we House Targaryen card has Khal Drogo, so presumably your picture of your big there.
New brand plus the 8 million ways to stand him equals Tricon Direwolves,
There
buddy.
you go.
It's true.
Chris, your audio is breaking up, by the way. So that whole last point, no one got it.
Yeah.
Really?
I think the point came across, but missed a few nuances.
Is she evergreen? Is she in the
Who?
box?
Who's evergreen?
She.
I
Jess?
just saw an Emissary
Jess is
Hightower
evergreen.
come across.
Chris did that.
Chris did that. Chris, is that card evergreen? Is that in the box?
Is that Snapcaster Mage?
Yeah, it's not
Is that
guessing.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah, I think so.
Would have been a
But they
nice
also-
choice.
kind of simple mechanics, so maybe that's a consideration. Or no mechanics in the case
Or
of
no
Braided.
mechanics?
Hey, no attachments is a keyword that
I mean, Shadow City's a little more
it's an
complicated than some of those
unqualified
cards.
keyword as well. That's important to understand. To go back to
Okay.
first.
Oh god.
So,
All right, should we
should we
talk
ju-
about the actual decks now?
All right, we should jump into
Can
the
we
actual
time
decks.
box the deck discussion so that we have enough time for all those amazing questions?
Yes, we will definitely do that.
'Cause
But
I know how we like to go off on tangents about pillage or certain version cards or
Oh.
whatever stupid.
So the
This
Stark decks are
cast.
shit, right? The Stark deck is like actively
I thought
bad
we
and
were
doesn't do
doing okay.
anything. Stark is the first deck.
Oh yeah.
So the Stark deck doesn't actually do anything. Like, what is the theme of this Stark deck?
dire wolves.
Kind
Ish?
of. Not
Kind
really.
of? Not, yeah, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
running core Bren. How Direwolves is the theme?
Yeah.
So one thing that was pointed out that we should point out for all these decks before we get too far in the weeds, that Fred pointed out, and I'd like to make sure it gets out there, is all of the cards in these decks are either from the core set, the house box, or a chapter pack that is pack 3 or later, so they will not be hit by the first set of rotations. So these will be legal for a long, long time, all the cards in them.
So rotation is coming sooner than later. Got it.
I mean, yes.
Hopefully.
It
Rotation of
seems
the
like it
first
is.
3. The first 2 will happen before rotation of the other cards.
No.
That's like
Yeah.
He's thinking though it might be sped up, and this is
Yeah, it
kind
might be
of
sped up, but, like, it
future-proofing
doesn't
against the
matter if
possible
it's gonna be
speed
sped
up.
up in this context, though, because either way, this is a smart decision for FFG because it creates the longest shelf life for these products, right?
Is this a sack
Yeah.
deck
And for
that's
stores.
is this a sack deck that's just running 2 cats? Like, what is this deck trying to do? I don't get it.
It's got a little sack. It's got a little wolf. It's got a little
I think
power rush
all
with
of them
Ned.
have a little themes of all of them.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
it's,
but
it's
this
a
one's
splash
real
deck.
bad.
It is
Jess,
real
what
bad.
you got?
It's pretty terrible.
Okay, that's
Just go in on the theme. If you're doing direwolves, just go in on it. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it
But
does
is
have
it-
an art card from the guy from the Fantasy Flight Event Center, so that's cool.
Is it
Yep.
terrible against the other decks though?
yeah, I think so.
You think so? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I think it can
I mean, the
hold its
question is
own.
they are all pretty low power, so.
Right.
I mean, I guess the greatest.
I
So,
don't think they're all pretty low power, but we'll get there.
all right, yeah, the Stark one is a little on the weaker side, but it's it's got some events like put to the sword.
and
and I
it,
It's
have
got
no
some
idea.
cards
And it's got
that-
ice,
that
right?
Show you the theme. Like it has triple winners coming.
yeah, it's
Got
claim
Osos.
claim
Yeah,
raise
it's got
attack.
no fun kind of theme. Like,
So you know what's gonna wreck
It's an
this
aggressive deck. I think it's an aggressive military deck. That's what
You
it
know
looks
what's
like.
gonna wreck this deck? Tears of Bliss.
Is Tears of Bliss conveniently in the next one? It is in the Lannister one.
Oh no!
That's called a transition.
We're all the way back to the
But
course.
no one's
meta.
gonna play
Lannister
Stark
running
against
over Stark.
Lannister. Why would they do that?
No, that's not like the first pair that's gonna be picked up by most people.
I mean, they in fairness,
like-
Stark has Bran, so they're one.
And
Bran
the person playing
thing.
Stark will get their ass kicked. It's thematic. They'll love it. They'll be like, "Oh man,
Yeah,
this
I was
freaking
gonna say,
this
it's
freaking
very
Lannister
thematic.
is tearing me apart." Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Best
Some of these
skill set
plots,
in the game.
Why are unexpected delay and gossip and lies in this?
What
sounds
Lies is for Cersei. It makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Gossip
For
and
Cersei.
Lies makes sense. It's
The
the
unexpected
doesn't
delay is to bounce
kneel.
your burn men back. Or something. I don't know, man.
But Cersei
also,
doesn't
like,
kneel on
if there's a
intrigue. Why does
card-
she need gossip and lies?
Because it's the theme of the house.
but also
But-
like not Gossip and Lies.
Intrigue,
Excuse
yeah.
me. Unexpected delay is not an easy card necessarily to like understand how to use properly. So like if I was building
Yeah.
like a learn to play, I would not put that in.
I agree.
Because
I'm
they,
actually
instead of putting
curious.
Valor to a Harris in some of these decks, like the ones that run lower, because there's a couple that run lower curves, that like they put Wildfire, which is the easiest to understand reset, right? Which is I pick 3 characters, you pick 3 characters, the rest die, right? But Valor to Harris is a little bit more complicated, and things and things like that.
Has anyone seen Unexpected Delay in like a real deck other than that characterless one?
Yes.
It's in some
yeah.
melee decks.
Not in a long time.
I mean,
Melee.
once upon a time.
We have a couple people in SoCal that it's kind of a pet card for them, so I see it every now and then.
Okay, I haven't except for in the characterless deck, and I guess maybe in melee. I don't know.
I've
But
seen a
it's-
couple
it
melee
just
decks
seems like
from Europe.
it's really hard, in my opinion. It's one of those cards that's really hard to time so that it never hurts you. So
And you
We'll
think
see.
you would put it in like Targaryen, which has an attachment, like matter is like one of their themes, but I don't know. It's a weird plot to put in there, but maybe it's going for the Frey theme because I don't know. There's no Freys, right? In there? There's no.
No.
there's not.
like,
I don't
What?
know. Well, Lannister
Alright.
nominally has a Frey theme. Has, like,
Sure.
two Frey cards.
Lannister's theme here seems to be
Pillage.
it's more pillage than anything else, right?
Pillage,
Like,
well,
no,
intrigue
Great
challenges,
stuff.
yeah.
Intrigue,
pillage.
yeah.
Intrigue challenges
look,
and pillage. Perfect.
Cersei is better than any card in the Stark deck, right? But then again, Cersei is better than any Stark card they could have put in unless they printed one just for this.
Yeah, that.
that's pretty accurate.
I'd argue
I
that
don't know,
Great Hall has some use over
So-
Cersei.
Cat.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be fair though, to the Stark deck plays into some Stark themes that exist in the full like well developed themes that exist in the full card pool. So like you buy this pack, you're like, oh, there's some direwolves here. There's some like characters and stuff that cares about you having Stark characters, and there's this like sacrifice theme. Like these are the 3 themes that kind of exist in there. And you then get the whole card pool, and you're like, oh, okay, I can slot. I really like direwolves, so I'll pull the other 2 modules out and put the direwolves in. Boom. This Lannister thing, except for the
Wait.
intrigue, this Lannister deck, except for the intrigue theme, pillage. Like, are you really guiding new players towards Lannister pillage as like a well-developed theme in the overall card pool?
I'm telling
Like-
Dave. I'm telling Bamford on you.
It's one
Yeah.
they have, like it's one that exists. We're not
Right.
saying it's good, but it is a Lannister theme.
Yeah, but it's poorly developed though.
Oh,
like,
sure,
I don't know.
of course.
Sure,
Like,
but
gold matters. I don't know.
so the way I look at these decks and the way I see these decks coming together, they're not perfect, but they provide a splash of each of the themes that the houses have. That's why they look so disjointed to us. Because the Stark one has some direwolf stuff, it has some no fun stuff like Frozen Solid, and then it has some aggressive kill stuff. And the Lannister one has some really good econ, has Gates of the Moon, things like that, has an intrigue theme, and it has a pillage theme. Like, those are the house themes. So when they see single interactions in these decks and say, oh wow, that was a really neat thing that happened in the game, say they pillage an event with Gregor's Marauders and get to stand them, then they get to go look at the rest of the card pool and say, how does this look?
Then they find Gregor. Whoa. And they're like, oh, I want to pillage. Like it's
Wait, is Gregor in this?
no,
He is?
no, because he's early
No.
packs. But they might want to go out and buy it right? Knowing that it's going to cycle eventually, but be like, whoa, like I want to add Gregor to this because he freaking pillages and does something awesome, maybe. So that would
I actually
Speaking
do
of
think
pillage, you know what's in Greyjoy?
pillage.
More pillage.
Pillage.
That's okay.
'Cause-
That's okay. There's 8 factions,
Some
guys.
Iron
No,
Island market.
I'm really just trying to move us along.
Because then you go, hey guys, you can banner up and go, Lanny Greyjoy, full blown pillage, and they're like, ooh.
There's no hint that banners exist in this. Don't you fucking go spoiling the game.
Yeah, I mean,
I
part of me
think
feels like it would
Greyjoy
be-
is the best house.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got.
I mean, they
Legion
put
out,
like
so-
two
Yeah,
of
you're
every
on.
one of their
and
broken
Risen
units in
and
there, so-
Euron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
no
yeah,
iron
it's
mines
got
though,
big-
right?
It's
No iron
got
mines.
big Asha. Yeah, but it's got.
Yeah.
It's got.
They
Who
have
cares?
two big Asha, 2 Euron, 2 Balon. Like, this deck's nuts.
With
Two
I mean,
Legion
it's
out
like,
Sos.
it doesn't even matter what else is in the deck. That's like 60%, 70% of a real deck right there.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair,
You
of
think
all
that'd
of them
be
you
fun?
could take to an actual tournament, probably the Greyjoy one is the closest to
Probably.
being like regional ready. If you were to like
Yeah.
hand this to someone, they could be like, they might
Apparently.
go 3-3 or something with this deck.
Apparently, if you
Got
can
trade
get a
routes
winning
and
record,
marched and counting.
yeah.
Those are counting.
If you
Like Greyjoy's a real
You,
deck. Everything else got
and
bullshit.
trade
Greyjoy got
routes?
a real deck. Yeah, trade routes. Dude, Greyjoy got a real deck.
apparently if you can have a winning record with one of these decks at Worlds, Darren Hazelton will buy you drinks for the rest of the day or something. I don't know.
Wow.
That was just something stated in the. Thought I'd give that a little bit more visibility.
It's in the
Greyjoy might be
audio
the deck
/
to
video
take.
part of it, Darren. So that's a in the United States that's a binding verbal contract.
That's right.
And
right.
so you're stuck buying drinks for the person who goes 4-2 with this deck.
How is Greyjoy so much better than the others? What were they thinking?
I
What was
I
the
actually
actual
think that-
process here?
Well, are you sure the economy base is going to support that? Like, I actually am not convinced that you.
Yeah,
You
they
really
It's
have
true.
Noble-
They're
they have
not the
Noble
one with for
Yeah.
some reason they didn't get the Great Halls, so
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they got the Iron Island markets instead.
Noble and trade routes.
Yeah,
Like that'll make up for a lot of econ trouble.
But all the
They
decks
have-
have Noble.
And they have 2 other 5 gold plots.
Did they get like We Do Not Sow or any other kind of support
Yeah.
pieces?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
have
two.
two.
All right.
And
Like,
2 foot to
of
the
course.
sword, which is almost
2
more
puts?
important.
Put so and 2 risen, and a plunder for God knows what.
gonna be
And
rough.
sneak
Also
Also
attack.
the only
I mean,
That's your
also the
econ
only
right
House of
there.
Smoke of the Poppy.
they can't offensively valor. That's something. That's something. Right? They're not just like you're not gonna get rolled turn 3 by them, but yeah, it's a strong deck.
Hmm.
Maybe. I mean, maybe we've never played them.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's
So
plug.
this
Let's
is
plug
another-
these things into Iron Throne and let's go for it. I actually want to try it out now. Yeah, let's go. Let's
all
go.
right. So that brings us to the best. We all lied. The best one's the Bear one, right? Running good cards like Stannis' Wrath and Disputed Claim and Light of the Lord.
And apparently Okay.
There's like no freaking Relore in this, right? Besides Mel.
There's a House Maester.
There's a Shireen.
Solis, the core
Shireen and
Solis,
Solis.
Yeah.
and Fiery Followers.
And you get
Shireen.
Fiery Followers as your promo for the day, so
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Light of the Lord, I guess.
And Thoros, yeah.
So it's a sub theme, right? A splash.
Mm.
It's
Not
actually
a
pretty
good splash,
fully
but a
developed,
splash.
actually. Like,
I mean,
talking about cards that are
And there's a
evergreen.
little bit of the dominance theme in
Right.
Big Bottom Bastard and
Big Mel.
Chamber.
Mhm,
And a
Oh, it's
little bit of
Big
the power
Mel.
theme.
It's
Oh.
Big
Yeah,
Mel,
Big Mel.
yeah.
Oh.
And then
Oh,
a
it's
little bit of the
Big
power
Mel.
theme in Red Keep and
So this is the worst faction.
I don't know about that. Like,
Triple
This'll be the
Alliance is
Lannister
not
deck.
nothing. Like
I don't think
Stannis,
so.
Stannis
What do they
in
do
a
if you get Big
Wildfire world.
Cersei? Oh wait, is it that Stannis? Okay. I guess that helps. Like, dude, Big Cersei's gonna be mean.
Nah.
You should just kneel.
you use
Yeah.
Solis to give your guys intrigue icons. That's what you do. Come on, guys. They thought of it. They thought of that.
They did. They probably did.
All right, so this
All right.
versus Lannis, worst of the factions. Cool.
So, the fundamental question is, we've looked at the decks. So the question is this going to, like, is do we, after seeing 4 of the 8 decks, and I can imagine we can think of like what the Night's Watch ones and the Targaryen and all that stuff are going to look like, do we think this is going to work? Like,
So,
No.
I'd like to pre-segue a little bit, because this is a primarily listener question episode, and we have a couple listener questions that are specifically about these decks. And I would like to take one that James Banfield posted. We were arguing back and forth about these decks
That's
on the
not his name.
Facebook.
Can you call James Banfield by his proper name? That is Bambi.
Bambi.
Yeah,
My
Bambi.
apologies.
Thank you. Call Bambi.
Anyway, but we were arguing back and forth in the Facebook group, and he said that if you want to bring people into the game with a deck like this, the deck should, in his words, be reasonably simple to play, give you the flavor of the house you're playing, and show you what good decks look like. And it's his contention that it does none of those things. And I just disagree with him. I think it does at least 2 of them. I think it does the first 2. It may not show you what a good deck looks like, because they need to eventually sell you cards and make all your 2-ofs into 3-ofs. But reasonably simple to play and gives you the flavors of the house, I think succeeds at both of those.
So does simple to play mean bad to play? Because like simple to play should be effective, right? Like that's sort of implied in simple to play.
No, that's not what simple is.
Like,
So-
like I turn cards.
Are we-
sideways.
Are we saying that the Tyrell starter should just be a mace deck? Like, because that's simple
It
to
should
play.
not be.
no, because I mean, come on. Have you ever seen people that are relatively new at the game play Mace? Like, he's not that simple of a card.
I mean,
Yeah.
without high
Yeah.
power.
It's really hard to just put power on him.
True.
Dude, we watch people mess up Mace
Yeah,
all day.
yeah,
At the,
he's
That's
effective,
always
but he's not
exactly.
simple.
Anyway,
I definitely agree that I think it's simpler to pick a theme, like which is when you like look. So you buy the pack, you look at all the cards, and once you look at all of them, you're like, oh, these cards together do X, right? These cards together do Y. Rather than the kind of like hodgepodginess of this, which I get they're trying to I think Chris is right that Danny and whoever else built these decks with him were trying to give us like a flavor, like all the different flavors. But I feel like it probably would have been a better design decision to build decks that had just one flavor. And then you'd be like, all right, the Barra deck is about Neil. The Lannister deck is about the Intrigue Challenge. The Stark deck is about Dire Wolves. Night's Watch is about defending the wall. And so that a player you could be like or doing the Jon Snow like stand with wildlings, like, oh, you like Jon from the later seasons, wildlings and Night's Watch working together, whatever, would have been better than this kind of like buffet style decks that they have here. That would be my contention of where the mistake was.
I
agree with Roy.
I actually, yeah, I don't disagree with Roy, except I think that I'm not sure it would have been an effective introduction to have the decks be that strongly themed. I do think that the buffet style has its merit in that you can give people an idea of the types of decks they enjoy. Which is to say, like, you get a little bit of Neil, you get a little bit of Dom, you get a little bit of, like, or whatever the sub-themes are for that house. And it lets you know, like, oh, I really like Cersei, but I hate this pillage garbage. Like, maybe I'll just build a deck around that. Or in, that's kind of, and I think that's the thing. Or vice versa. I really love pillage, but I don't know what this intrigue bullshit is. Like, let me just focus on the Tywin and this pillage stuff. Like, I don't know that that's ineffective. And I think that, like, it's more important. I think it's less important that the deck be good as long as the decks within their universe are relatively balanced. And I think it might fail at that. Like, it
Sure.
definitely looks like there may be some balance issues. But overall, I think I agree with you, Chris, in that they do provide they provide a lot of benefit to people that are new to the game and don't know what they want yet.
Sid, check the Facebook chat quickly.
Oh,
All right.
the Facebook
Cool.
chat?
Yes.
Yeah. Buzz sent you a message. Anyone else have any final thoughts about this, or can we move on to our next question?
I wanted to bring out a couple of things that CT said as well. Oh, sorry. On this cast, the Lesser Thompson.
Thank you.
He had a couple specific points about the decks that he wanted to make. One we've covered pretty in depth, which was that he doesn't believe that the houses are really prepared thematically, but I think we've all kind of moved along from that. He doesn't like the 2-ofs, which is both fair and unfair. This product is an intro product. It's not meant to give you something like a World Championship deck where it's ready to play out of the box in a big tournament. So the 2-ofs are not a big deal to me. They want you to buy the rest of the card pool. His third one, I think, is his most convincing point, which is that there's not a lot of neutral representation. There's like 2 tiers in one deck, which is not a great card anymore. There's 2 milks in the Greyjoy deck.
The best kill spell in the game.
That's right. I know. I hate to say it, especially because I have a signed Tears of Seth that I miss getting to play. But there's no Nightmares and no Hand's Judgment in any of the decks, and that seems like a real misstep. I mean, we're halfway there, so
it could. You know why there's no Nightmares?
Oh, because it's rotating. Sure.
Yeah.
Aaron,
your camera's off.
Yeah, you turned off your camera.
I haven't even. All right, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I feel like that was definitely a mistake that they made. But then, of course, I think they were also trying to avoid as much redundancy as possible. So, like, roads, obviously, right? They're the base econ. But you don't want to, like each deck, I think they wanted to be a relatively unique experience looking at all of them. So they didn't want to be like, say Nightmares didn't rotate. Say Nightmares was in the Stark box, right? They didn't want if you buy 2 or 3 of these to be like, oh, Nightmares isn't every one of these decks, or Milk isn't every one of these decks. It's more like trying to give you a fuller taste of the whole card pool within the ecosystem of just these 8 decks.
Sure, and it's interesting the restrictions that they were put under by the rotation thing. I think it's overall a smart move. But there are some iconic cards that you have to assume we're going to get some sort of functional replacement for at least. I'm thinking specifically, aside from Nightmares, Greyjoy doesn't have Iron Mines, things like that. Where it's
I hate Iron Mines.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're going to get some sort. Like saving is just naturally their theme. They get a couple Risens, but there's not a lot else out there that can show off the theme.
Greyjoy needs a new theme. Saves are inherently unfun. You know what's really fun? Static board states. Ugh.
Actually, I agree with Aaron. That's why I like Burn so much. Saves are no fun.
I really don't like saves.
I'll be really curious to see the direction of some of the houses that are a bit more diverse in their themes. Like how they're going to try and set up a Night's Watch deck that can maybe have a wall theme, but then also is trying to steal your guys that they pillaged. Like, it's gonna be kind of weird.
Steel guys, the wall, a little bit of Rush. Yeah,
I would like Lannister and
There'll probably
Greyjoy
be Big John. Big John kind of like if you're talking about actually, I feel like the 7-cost John is a really good card for the kind of thing that they're trying to do here. Because he like highlights
John or the old 7-cost John.
Well, the box John.
Yeah. Okay. Wildling and Night's Watch John.
The Bicon John, whatever term we want to use. But
John is bi.
Well, he's also bi traded, right? So there's just like a lot of bi going on with that Jon Snow. But anyway, with with either the defense or the attack, right? So I actually think it will just be a Jon Snow deck, like a box Jon Snow deck, because you read that card, you're like, oh, okay. When I need to defend, he will stand all the defending Night's Watch characters. When I need to attack, he'll stand all these Wildling characters in here. And I think we may end up seeing more neutral cards in the Night's Watch pack than we would, say, in the other packs we've seen so far.
Actually economy?
Actually thinking about it.
Don't they need the economy more than anyone else? Because they don't even have their reducer.
The economy is legal. It's in the 3rd cycle, so.
Yeah, but
they're gonna get 3 meager contributions again.
And ocean roads. They can put ocean roads if there's a bunch of wildlings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I do. Oh, sorry. One thing I do think was a missed opportunity with the neutral cards is like, I know everybody that is a serious player wants more of neutrals, like because you use them in all these decks that you keep around. So it does seem like weird to not have Great Halls in all the decks, or and not have like common multi-use cards. But whatever, I don't expect them to get it perfect on their first try.
I think they do. If what they're supposed to do is just get a new player a cheap thing to buy and play and see if they like the mechanics of Game of Thrones, like that's all it is. From there, like these things will not last. That's not what they're for. They're not supposed to be competitive decks. You're not supposed to take them to anything but this event, and then they figure out if they like whatever houses they played. I think if you focus too much on one theme, they might just be like, forget Stark. Like they're lame. I don't like Direwolves. This is stupid. But you can play Stark, without playing Direwolves, right? Or they might say,
you though?
well, yeah, of course you can. I mean, not well, and you can't play Direwolves well right now. Like, but the point is, I like the splash because you'll just say, do I like this game? Do I like the challenge phase and the way challenges are done? That's all you need to know, right? From there, they'll either go for it and play some more and buy another one of the decks, or buy a core set. And if these people show up another week, right, to your play night, or if you just say, hey, come to the play night, I'll bring some more competitive decks, and you can try those out too and see if you like them. Like, it's just about getting the hook set, and if these kind of get them trying it in a friendly way that's not just like a bunch of kind of dedicated people on normal play night playing really competitive decks. This is like, hey, this is a casual night. It's for new people. If you see someone wandering around, you grab them and say, hey, let me teach you the game. These decks accomplish that, and that's all they need to accomplish. Like that's really what we need. We need a night, a day, an event to get new people playing. This isn't for us. Hopefully, we just teach people to play.
So
Since
hold on.
this isn't for us, can we move on?
I want to say one quick thing.
No, because it needs us, or else it fails, and we need it to be successful, or else our game fails too. So sorry, Aaron, it's relevant.
Open question to me, and I actually think that when they spoil the next round of these, I think we probably will want to have somebody who works at a game store. So the question that I have is like whether or not, and this is probably people like Brad Eamon or the other people that work like at the Wausau Game Store, the closest thing that I can think of would be the Magic Planeswalkers decks, which would be, they're a bit more mono-themey than these decks are. And the question is, like, what is easier to sell to people? Like, I know what these decks do, and you describe how you want to play the game, and then I give you the deck that's closest, and it clearly does. Like, I like screwing up what my opponent does, so that's how I like to play card games. I'm a control player in Magic, so I'll give you this Bara deck, which is all about stopping what your opponent wants to do, right? And sort of like, what's easier to sell a game on someone? Something this like bit more homogenized experience that's kind of like, well, here's all the possibilities of this faction, versus, and that, just generally, ooh, I like Lannister, so give me the Lannister deck. Or is it easier to be like, I like doing X, give me that deck that does X. I like doing Y, give me that deck that does Y. Like, this is like a legitimate, like, I want to talk to, and I think it would be great to have on the show people that work at a game store and have to sell things like Magic, have to sell things like the various anime trading card games to people, and like those starter products and how they interact, right?
So why don't we just wait till we have one of them up?
Right, but if you say something like, "Hey, what type of card game do you like to play?" What if the person's like, I don't know what you're asking me." Just
poker.
They're like, I like Game of Thrones, man. Like, I mean, that people do walk people walk into stores that aren't competitive card players, and we want them too.
Right, but then you just say, well, "What's your favorite faction?" You just give them a Stark deck, and they don't know like control versus all the other things. It's like, oh, does it have Robb Stark in it? Like.
It feels like something that'd be good to discuss on this episode you're talking about when we have 4 other lists.
Yes. So, anyway, we should now move on, Glazer.
Did we mention, apparently the TCG blogger would like us to note that that there's an LOTR LCG starter set that got announced, which is a nice single box that has 2-player and seems better designed than this.
I'm not sure I agree with him that it's better designed, but
he didn't say that. That's what I'm getting.
This is for
the Rings
trading the cooperative LCG.
Yeah, it's like to promote the new digital version. They're coming out with a like special physical edition.
If there's a game with an intimidating card pool, it's the Lord of the Rings LCG. So it's good that they're coming out with a friendly product, but that's kind of the end of my opinion.
It's not exactly apples to apples, though, because their card pool can be intimidating, but also you don't need the whole card pool to play the game. Like, I bought 2 core sets, and I'm going to play those with my wife, and then we're going to buy the first cycle, play those, and then buy the next box. And it's not like I'm missing anything. I had the same experience as someone that did that 5 years ago when it came out.
I think the one I do think there's an important distinction to make in that there's a cooperative versus competitive nature. Like you don't take Lord of the Rings to I don't. Are there even Lord of the Rings tournaments? I
At
don't.
Gen Con.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like event
Okay, well, I
tournaments.
didn't
Yeah.
But it's like cooperative, kind of. You just play against a really hard deck. But I think actually this
Right.
year, you can like build a deck against other people. So.
All right, so we're gonna transition now to a different topic. So what's the next thing on your
Literally anything else, please.
All right, so we got some listener questions. We put up a couple Facebook posts today, and or yesterday maybe. We got some quite a big list of questions actually.
I'll be right back then. Go ahead though.
Let's start with perhaps the most aggressive question on the list from Jimmy S, who asks, "What deck will win Gen Con, and how many green cards will be in it?"
About 47 green cards. It'll be Wars, and yeah, that tells us the house, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, I disagree.
Hashtag bold prediction: Tyrell will not win Gen Con.
Yeah, I agree with Roy.
Ooh.
It's gonna be Lanny Crossing.
No.
Yes.
I don't think so.
That
It can win. I mean, you can't say it can't win, right?
Sure.
You can't say it can't win.
Can.
It can. I don't know if it will.
I didn't think
but
it was
it
going to
can.
be Kubla, obviously, since I didn't play it.
I actually think it'll be a Martell deck. I don't know what Martell deck, but
I mean, Wars. There's no other Martell
Wars.
deck right now.
Is there not another Martell deck? I don't know,
No, there's
but I
no
know
other
it's
Martell
not going to be Targ, and it's
You
probably
know
not.
it's not going to be Targ?
If
Just
there's a Targ
too
deck
much
that could
Tyrell.
win, I would be playing it.
the fundamental question is, we have one more pack that's going to be out legal for Gen Con, right? The pack comes out next week, right? And until we see those cards, we don't know like what
Nice.
the
I
meta
know what
is.
we're doing on the next white book. That's convenient.
It is convenient, but like Jimmy, really, we should kick. I don't think Tyrell will win, but we should kick this question down to the next episode that we do once we have a better sense of what the card pool is going to be. Because I mean, obviously
Let's
Tyrell's
make an
feel
early
that the cards
prediction.
aren't fucking getting restricted, but
Right.
they're like Martell could get another busted card because they've been getting busted cards for like 3 packs that
Have
pushes them
they?
above Tyrell.
Have they?
They got a
one busted card.
They got a really good box, and
Yeah,
they
that was
got
like 4
a
packs.
really busted card.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's cool. Just, Terrell fan who
They got a
doesn't know
busted
that,
army.
that Terrell has literally never had a pack where they didn't
My-
get at least one
My
stellar
point
card.
was not. This is the
But,
problem we
yeah.
have every single fucking time we talk about this Glacier. My point there was that the Tyrell cards are bad. It is that Martell has been getting good cards. Like you could separate these two things.
All right.
Terrell and Martell are very married right now.
So we're
So-
talking
so-
about how the match has been nothing but Martell and Tyrell and back and forth, and Martell or Tyrell is going to win Gen Con. I have a listener question from Fred B here, who would like to know how you would restrict Martell and Tyrell cards without nerfing them into the ground.
Is that Fred Bird?
It is.
Yes.
Ooh, I like him. Can I go first because it's restricted
Do it.
list? I mean, we're saying restrict, not ban, right?
Presumably, yes.
Okay, so you restrict Doran's game and what's that stupid card called?
Flea bottom?
No. No one cares about Flea Bottom. Flea
No.
Bottom's not good for Tell anymore.
Secret
Um,
schemes.
No. Cancels
Tells.
plots.
Someone always.
Someone
tells.
always tells.
Someone always tells.
Just
It's
like
my-
Martell without Someone Always Tells. The Doran's game decks are the top of the meta right now for Martell. And Martell without Martell is real vulnerable to reset because they're not running uniques, right? Like all those non-uniques just go away at first sign of reset unless you have Someone Always Tells. And without those two, Martell is very vulnerable.
I
Dang.
never use Someone Always Tells on resets.
Really?
Yeah, never.
I use it on VM. I very rarely use it on BD.
I almost always use it on their trade routes.
Yep.
I use it.
So-
My experience has been counting and trade routes is what gets canceled.
Yep.
Either way. If you
Counting
don't
is
have-
a
don't
it's a
have
good
that.
play. No econ,
Yeah.
no cards. Yeah, it's pretty good.
If you don't have that plot cancel, they're human.
No.
They're like
Sure.
they're normal.
I like that.
Are they
very good
dancers?
Right, they either lose their plot cancel or they lose their win condition, which
Right.
is I like that. How about Tyrell?
Restrict 4 cards.
So yeah, it's got to be like 4. So I mean, you start with Mace. You do Mace and Hightower. Those are the 2 obvious ones. I don't think that's enough because I still think they're that freaking far ahead of the curve. I'd also probably restrict Big Marjorie.
No.
And yeah, I know, Roy. You're just gonna.
It's super easy, Aaron. I'm gonna just talk over you. It's Hightower, Mace, Septon, Old Town. Boom. You're done. Tyrell goes down.
You don't need to
Goes
restrict.
down to where the
Septon.
level of where you are by Tyrell.
Septon? Wait, Septon? What's Septon?
Scheming
Scheming
Septon.
Septon, the
Scheming,
Shadows card.
yeah.
Shadow.
Yeah, those 2 are wrong.
Yeah, that card's garbage.
No, it's not.
I mean, it's not
No, it's
garbage.
not.
but
Real
it's
good
not,
with Old
it's not
Town.
great.
Stupid good.
Yeah, okay. I
You're
mean,
completely wrong.
it's not garbage, but it's definitely not a card I would restrict.
Yeah,
given their
that's
other
not.
cards.
It would be Big Marge, and it would be the draw jump in thing. I don't remember what that one's called.
The Informer. The Old Town Informer.
Yes.
Sure,
yeah.
Old Town Informer. It would be Big Marge and the Old Town Informer because they need
I
to
agree
have
with
less
that.
goddamn card advantage. Like it basically it says pick a card advantage engine or run a Mace deck, and then you have to run Pleasure Barge because it's not like they don't have fucking 5 other draw cards, right? Like pick a card advantage engine. Stop making it so easy for them.
Sounds good to me. Along the theme, James A would like us to answer how much more oppressive passive power gain does Tyrell need until FFG decides the challenge phase matters again, and which quote-unquote fun factions or agendas are best positioned to fight its oppressive nature? I mean, this question has no bias behind it and
No.
sounds totally fair.
Yeah.
It's totally not at all salty that he didn't make the cut at Dance with Dragons, but his brother did.
Roy, what beats
Spicy.
Tyrell?
What beats Tyrell?
Didn't you make a video about that, Roy?
I did. Barring the Gates beats Tyrell. Attrition beats Tyrell. Particularly, really like the problem is Tyrell has a lot of margin of error, so you can make a lot of mistakes and lose, and Tyrell will beat you. But the key thing is what consistently does it is either A, decks that are trying to lock down the board state like as quickly as possible. So like a Greyjoy deck that's running like 2 barring, and particularly like a faster one like a Greyjoy Rose that can go toe to toe with the speed of Tyrell and does things like double barring and can just kind of like prevent their card advantage through there. Or you can go the attrition route, which is that you just sort of keep the board clear, keep the board clear. Like Scott Levine, Aaron and my fellow White Book co-host, was part of this ridiculous Tyrell Alliance deck that was just heavy attrition that consistently that beat, I think, Tyrell twice in the Swiss and just kind of got varianced out because it's an Alliance deck in the cut against Tyrell. But that game plan of sort of wearing them out of resources and like constantly trying to march things is the 2 strategies that I would suggest to people. And another thing would be, particularly for the greedy decks, like this isn't people that are using Wama's deck as like their base, this isn't going to be such a problem, but the kind of decks that I saw at Dance, like Political Disaster can be really bad for them. Like there's like a lot of really greedy Tyrell players out there now who just like don't want to dupe their locations, just want to slam out the Old Town, slam out the Hightower, and will play that. And then Nothing Burns Like the Cold would be the other thing I suggest, because again it punishes greedy Tyrell. Because as any faction rises, right, the quality of overall like play of people who are playing it goes down. So you get a lot of people who are like, oh, I understand Hightower's really good, I'm going to set it up, and they set it up unprotected, and you can just punish them. So, and particularly if you can combine Nothing Burns with the Cold with an attrition strategy, you should have a pretty good success. But there's no promises because Tyrell has that huge margin of error because it's card advantage and it's high level of renown. But those are the strategies that I would suggest if I was redoing my video.
Cool. That's thank you for that, Roy. So now
Played a lot of Tyrell over the 2018. So
now that we've argued back and forth about whether Tyrell is awful and oppressive, let's move into Rob's.
Everyone agrees it is.
spoiler alert. Can I? No.
Except Roy.
Do you want me to seriously answer this? Because I can. I don't think it's oppressive in the ways in which previous decks have been like oppressive. I don't think that Tyrell locks people out of play styles by its presence in the meta. I just think that it just
It's
is
just less
really,
amount of winning.
yeah, just win.
It
But
just
it's
rolls
not like,
over all the other playstyles. It doesn't stop them. It just
like,
rolls over
you
them.
can't just like not play a deck against Tyrell and like there's no auto lose. I think against Tyrell, it's just like Tyrell is just so it's different than like a kill deck that prevents things. It's because it's constructive nature. It's not oppressive in that way. It's just dominant would be the way I would put it.
I think you're playing semantics.
He's splitting the hair. Then he's splitting that hair pretty thin.
Words have meaning. You can't just call something oppressive because you don't like it. It means a certain thing. And Roy is exactly correct in that Tyrell is not oppressive because it's constructive. That's totally valid.
I think this leads really well into our next question, which comes from Rob, who would like some discussion about Wama's best play experience list, and would like to hear us talk about our favorite and least favorite matchups. So for those of you that haven't been paying attention in the Facebook group, Wama posted a poll, kind of an informal poll, where people rated from most like to play to least like to play all 8 houses, and then kind of called the data down and did a nice spreadsheet dump that I will put in the Twitch chat. That's a link to Wama's thread where he shows the data that people most like to play against Roy's favorite house, Lannister, and least like to play against Sandy's favorite house, Targaryen.
So, I'll be honest, I thought Martell would be at the bottom of that list and not Targ, but I can definitely see why people don't like playing against Targ.
Targ fits right where I would put it. But
I at least want to play against Night's Watch. I don't care if they're good. I just hate playing against wall decks. It's the most boring thing in history.
So what we'll do is we'll give our opinions, and we'll start with our guest, Jess. So, what's your favorite to sit across from you? What's your favorite to play against, and what's your least favorite?
I generally like playing against Greyjoy because usually it's bad players playing it.
There's the Jess.
Wow.
It's not an accurate show and tell.
He was forced. Well, one of the times.
Wow.
I do. I mean, I think Greyjoy, it's pretty easy to figure out how to beat him, right? Like, you're just, let me get my Milks to put on their big guys. Oh, let me reset them to get rid of their big guys.
No. All their decks are the same. I mean, not every deck's the same, but you know what you're playing.
Basically the same. Yeah.
So,
there's not going to be any surprises. You're not like, oh man, I didn't see that coming.
Yes, there is. When they pillage something, you're just like, great.
So,
I ran a one of that, and now
who do you
it's
hate
theirs.
the most, Jess?
Probably Tyrell. Definitely. Just because, like, it's annoying. You could win a bunch of challenges and be, like, at 12 power, and then they're at 10 power, and you're like, cool, I just lose this turn because Mace.
Would you call that aggressive by any chance? Because words have meanings.
Or is it dominant?
Yeah, I think it's dominant. I don't think it's
dominant.
These are so
Shut up, Sandy. I wasn't being serious.
Ignore Aaron and go to Sid. Sid, what is yours?
God, what do I like? I actually like to play against Tyrell. I kind of like the challenge of it. I like that not every deck is the same. You know, that they do kind of have a little bit of a different flavor when I play against them. I don't know if it's just the people I'm playing, but every Wars deck doesn't look exactly the same. And what do I hate? Right now I just hate playing against Lannister because it's just crossing is all I find. Like, I try and play different Lannister decks still because I like exploring non-crossing builds, but if it's Lannister, it's like, oh, it's a crossing matchup, and it's that I know exactly what you're gonna do, and I hope I can beat it, and I don't like knowing exactly. It's the same thing kind of with Greyjoy. I don't like sitting across from an opponent and being like, okay, I know what's gonna happen here. I like the surprises that are inherent in the game, or that used to be inherent in the game. So right now it's I don't like playing against Lannister because I don't think people are exploring it, which I don't blame them. Their crossing's good.
So can I just a quick question for Sid? Hey, who's responsible for all the landing crossing that are everywhere?
Not me.
So, like, who built that to begin with?
Not me, man.
Yeah, I don't know where
Nicolo built the rush.
Hey, yeah. This is Nicolo's version. My old jumper stuff, like this was before Valor. Like it was a different world, man. That was a different time. Like that. Yeah, it ran 3 put to the swords and 3 of the best kill spell in the game in the old. Like it was a totally different kind of play style, right? It was an aggressive deck that it didn't just passively gain all the power. It didn't just spike you to death. And Big Cersei didn't even exist back then. It was different. Don't put this on me, man. Don't put this on me.
Sandy?
I think my favorite is it's a toss-up between Lannister and Greyjoy. For the most part, because they are like mid-range-y factions in terms of they play big guys. There's not a lot of like it's very straightforward to planning to play against them. My least favorite currently is probably Martell. It was definitely Martell Wolf. It might still be just Martell. I hate that style of play against me. I mean, Stark has some of it in terms of like Catelyn and the Frozen Solid and Winterfell, and like it's just you don't get to do anything. We make your deck more boring to play. It's not like our deck is fun to play. It's just your deck is more boring to play. But it's probably Martell. I hate the like cancel bullshit. Don't play. Oh, you're gonna make it a challenge and win? Let me look at your hand and discard your best card. Or you're gonna like just the effects are all obnoxious. There's no effect that is like fun and interactive. It's all just like fuck you and fuck you again. I would say Martell is oppressive. I think people will play against a Martell deck, and
but not dominant, correct?
Not twice. They would never want to play the game again. They would just be like, this game is garbage. That doesn't happen.
Aaron?
Okay. I least like to play against Night's Watch just because it's the most boring thing in human history. Like specifically defense decks, they're just horribly boring. And I most like to play against Stark because I like winning.
It's true.
Schoenthal.
I would say I most like to play against Stark for a different reason than Aaron, although I do also like winning a lot.
Yes,
A lot of
you do.
That's right. A lot of Stark's tricks are kind of on board. There's not a lot of Martell surprises where you're like, oh, might need to play around that. I might need to play around this other thing. Stark has a lot of kind of pretty strong cards, but they're all out there. They put their cards on the table and they say, here, can you beat these? And you just kind of get to look at it and figure out the board state and see if there's a way to maneuver through it. And it's interesting to me, and usually I'm able to beat them. So in terms of least favorite, I don't want to be the same as Aaron and say Night's Watch, but defense decks are really boring to play against.
Longer we've been doing this podcast, man.
Yeah. It's so just it's like watching paint dry. You're like, can I do anything about it? Nope. Okay, cool. Let's move on.
So for me, in the current meta, it would probably be Baratheon, because a lot of most Baratheon decks that I've played against recently have relatively like linear strategies, and there's like a scope to what they're capable of doing, and the things you play around are relatively limited. Do they have Selyse? Do they not have Selyse? Do they have Melisandre? Do they not have Melisandre? There's not like tons of different threats like Martell or tons of different threats like Tyrell. There's just very few things that Vera can do, and most of those things are just mostly if you just wait, they run out of steam. For example, Selyse, unless they can truly just start abusing her, eventually they'll stop being able to recur her and you just win. So there's very like Bera's just kind of like Neil's not that oppressive or dominant. So it's pretty easy to play against. And then my least favorite faction to play against, I'm gonna zig where people expect me to zag and say Greyjoy. I think that they combine everything I hated about Lannister, which is a bunch of 7-cost big dudes that do a bunch of really annoying things, with the variance of pillage being good in that faction. And there's literally nothing worse than getting beaten up by Euron, who has a ton of power on him, and he starts stealing your best locations. That's like so much fun. That's just, that's like Miri level fun for me. So probably the saltiest I get, besides Danny burning everybody down in one turn, is playing against Greyjoy. So
yeah, can I just add that it's a really dumb design decision to have the location control faction also be the pillage faction, also be the steal your shit faction. Like two of the three, maybe all three is just ridiculous.
Wait, did I miss something? Does Night's Watch have pillage now?
Are we complaining
What are we
about the
talking
power
about?
of Greyjoy? What's going on? Come on.
No, I'm complaining about the variants.
faction?
Come on.
I'm complaining about the variants of Greyjoy.
Yeah.
playing against Greyjoy is the most variance-heavy matchup, I think, currently in the moment.
That's why they can just win tournaments, like roll through, like, oh man, I'm so good, and then like just shit out the next one. It's just like, oh man, I didn't pillage Dorne once this game.
Yeah, it's rough.
All right, what's the next question you got for us, Chris?
So we've talked a little bit about houses. Let's move into the ubiquitous agenda of the day. Edward Kim would like to ask, with the release and immediate success of Donovan Van Beek's Wars to Come agenda, is there a reason to play Reigns of Castamere or Fealty anymore?
No. Next question.
Maybe Reigns, but definitely not Fealty.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think it has less to do with Wars to Come and more with the prevalence of pretty good faction Neil effects.
Yeah.
When the game came out, there were almost none, and so it was like, oh yeah, I'll just get the free econ. I do think that Reigns has its place. There is a lot of value in flipping a plot in challenges. I don't think Wars to Come takes away from that. That being said, any deck now that is a single faction, you may as well just make Wars to Come, because there's always a good faction Neil that you can put in.
So
Is there always one? What's nice? Nice watch? Not really.
Isn't one of their good
Trixie.
events faction
Trixie.
Neil? Trixie Bird?
So I think it has everything to do with the plot card pool, which is that the ability right now to run 10 plots has outpower creeped the ability to like what the schemes give you, right? Like, and I think you can see this, I think, most clearly in both the factions that rely the most on Reigns, which are not the best factions right now, but the most successful builds, the mid-range builds of them, like Greyjoy and Lannister, are no longer, like, those are dead decks, right? And Tyrell Reigns is largely a dead deck. Like, it's just not as consistent. It doesn't give you what you want as much. Now, if more powerful schemes are printed, then maybe Reigns becomes, I think, a better choice, because it becomes a real evaluation between I want these other faction Neil effects versus the ability to flip into these awesome schemes. But right now the schemes are much lower than the in power level than the utility of running 10 plots, particularly the ability in a lot of these decks to run multiple resets.
Ethan also pointed out in chat that it's also significantly harder than it used to be to actually trigger Reigns and win by 5 anymore, because
I agree with that.
everybody, even the houses that used to be pretty garbage in Intrigue, have at least one or two good big Intrigue characters. So the utility, regardless of utility, it's tougher to actually make it work, and you have to kind of balance whether it's worth the effort or not.
Yep.
Yeah, and Doran's game also distorts the meta in a way that promotes that as well, right? Because more factions have to care explicitly about intrigue challenges, because they have to be able to defend intrigue challenges, not just in a, oh my god, Reigns will own me, but in a way of, oh my god, they'll win the game.
I'll lose. If I lose this intrigue challenge, I lose the game.
To a Doran's game if I don't make sure that my intrigue hole is shored up. So the power of Doran's game also distorts the meta in an anti-Reigns way.
Well, we're also in a meta where even beyond Doran's game, intrigue is the most important challenge. Finally,
maybe power is probably.
Military is clearly least. I think intrigue is most important in general right now. I think especially with okay, well, it depends on how much Doran you're seeing. Like Doran and Hightower completely devalue intrigue, but against everyone else, intrigue is extremely strong.
So I think there is one circumstance in which I'd still run Fealty, and that is if I'm playing in a Learn to Play tournament with intro decks that all have Fealty as the agenda. I would still probably pick that one.
We're never leaving this topic.
All right. Says the man who in our private chat said we were going to die in this topic. He brings it all the way back. Such a hypocrite.
So the next one is kind of a combination of the last couple topics. Buzz would like to No, if he thinks that Targ Wars is slightly overrated right now, is that Buzz being a genius? This is Buzz Hannon, to be clear, not Buzz the Beautiful.
Oh, okay. We can take any questions from Buzz Hannon. We can't take any questions from Buzz Veterans.
Is that him being a genius, or is it him being salty because he can't win with it as much as he likes? So essentially, is Targ Wars the best Targ? Is it overrated right now? What do you guys think?
So we have two of the best Targ players
just
in North
Sandy.
America currently sitting on this cast in the form of Jess and Sandy. So which one? The Mother of Dragons or Khal Drogo over there? Who wants to take a stab at this first?
I mean, I can. Wars is definitely better. I think everyone is messing around with HRD Plaza for a while, but just the flexibility. I think Wars is 100% better. Probably the best version.
I don't know. So I think the hierarchy is Fealty is probably above most of the Red Door decks, which should tell you something about how much I hate the Red Door decks. I think Reigns might be better than Fealty, and I think Wars is better than Reigns. I'm not sure, but I suspect that there is.
Yeah, where's Crossing fit into that hierarchy?
Yeah, I think Crossing is the top of the heap right now.
Above Wars?
I think that. Yeah, I think that the meta right now is unprepared to deal with good rush decks, and like the combination of like regular Targ Wars takes freaking forever to win. It's so slow. You can't it's like it's a boulder. You will lose if you let it get past a certain point. But it is really slow, and that's why like Landing Crossing does so well. Is it can win really fast before it gets its feet on the ground. Same thing. It also has a chance against the Tyrell passive power gain decks, which I think Targ Wars has more problems dealing with. And it can outrush the Martell Dorn's game. That's probably the hardest matchup in my opinion. But I think that the Crossing deck, in one form or another, beats out Wars in this meta.
I've not seen anyone playing Targ Crossing.
You had one at Dance that was in the top 8 that was just running over people all day.
Is it just like Dothraki, or is it like Burn too?
It wasn't running Dracarys as far as I saw.
So it's burn without Dracarys because Targ has other burn cards now.
Yeah.
I do think. I mean, I think it's crazy that like just there are enough Dothraki cards that's a viable alternative. I when I threw together my deck, I thought it was like second tier at best, but it's been doing pretty well.
Dude, last year didn't Matt just final 2 with the Dothraki deck?
No, I mean, but also the world champion won.
Targ Crossing did win the world championships. It did.
Yeah.
And then
that
was a Dothraki.
That was a Dothraki deck. It had a Chrono-based Dothraki.
Yeah, it had one.
No, but my point is there is a hybrid. I bet there's somebody smarter than me will put together a real Targ Crossing deck with like better cards instead of my weird proclivities to avoid.
We've been trying. It's harder than you think.
Well,
I think
it's really not an easy build.
As Matt says, men on horses. That's the theme of the Dothraki deck. Just every card that has a guy on a horse.
So can I zag on this question? I think the problem is Targ isn't as good as they used to be. I think they're the clear third in the meta. And I think like the reason you're not winning as much with your Targ Wars isn't that there's anything wrong with Targ Wars, or that there's inherently some better Targ build, although there might be. It's that Targ is...
So you're playing against Tyrell half the time. So
you're playing against Tyrell, and
that's why.
Wars with its giant shrink dudes don't really care about your burn, and it's a problem, right? Like, if you were playing against the same decks you were before with Targ, you'd like. But two decks have clearly established themselves as 1 and 2, or 1A and 1B if you prefer, and then there's a huge drop off to 3. And like Targ is still better than everything else, but like the top 2 are so good, I don't know if it matters.
And I definitely agree. And these current Martell and Tyrell builds grew up in a meta that was Targ dominant, right? So like they learned how to beat Targ, right? Like so there's a combination of a few new cards that both like Tyrell got the Septon that really does help with the Targ matchup. It got Hightower Spy, and people started playing that card over some of the other ambush Tyrell cards. And Old Town came back into Tyrell decks, despite the fact Walma didn't have it in his Euros deck. So those three factors helped Tyrell a lot. And then Martell got a plot cancel that is super good against Targaryen, both against their awesome events and canceling their counting coppers. Like, what does a
draw? They're just sad and done.
Yeah, like there's just so many things, and the fact that these Martell Wars decks need to win challenges rather than wear your board down means that they have to run bigger characters like that army, Host of the Boneway, right? Is that the name of the army? So that aren't as burnable. So
I think that's another point toward the Martell side of the argument for Targaryen is that at least in California and specifically in the NorCal builds of the Targ Wars that came out around Kubla, is they had kind of deviated into a build with some Beggar Kings and King Plot, and the Martell decks now just don't care about King Plot anymore. They have big dumb dudes that have cool keywords like Intimidate, and they have Doran's game, and they don't give a shit if they can't do anything. Like they don't need to.
That's my concern with Martell, actually. Like, if you break up this deck, I think the house just dies. It's not like King Plot went anywhere, right? Like, King Plot just completely annihilates that house. So, like, it's this build, or, like, look at King Plot, be sad, move on.
So, the fundamental question is, like, what I do think is, like, Targ does have an opening in the meta as these Tyrell and Martell decks begin to sort of fight among themselves, and particularly the Tyrell starts to tech itself harder to beat the Martell. It's gonna open up holes in the Tyrell players' game plans, and I think also the same is true for Martell players, although less extent, because I think the tools that Martell players need to beat Tyrell are closer to what they need to beat Targ. But I think the more Tyrell doubles down on I need to beat these Wars decks, the Martell Wars consistently, the more of an opening it will be for Targaryen players, particularly if there's a fast kind of build that Sandy's talking about, like people go back to the Reinhardt style or the Dark Naj / Matt style of, really fast but also burn. There'll be room for that against these highly Martell beating Tyrell decks.
You know what the best
I
don't
count Tyrell out, or Targ rather, excuse me, out. It's just right now.
You know what the
Aaron's a very,
two cards? You know what the two cards that are best against them? Well, the three cards, I guess, that are best against the Martell deck in Tyrell, the events. It's +2 strength to 3 dudes. It's Nightmares and it's Hand's Judgment. And you know what other house? You know
that's
what other house
event package that you mentioned there. That's exactly the events in Walma's deck.
Yeah, well, I mean, so you know what? Besides Martell, those 3 events are really good against
Targaryen.
Yeah. So like, this isn't like, like
that's why you need
I
speed,
don't,
Darren. Like that's what I'm trying to say here. Like it's speed plus burn.
Nightmares and Hand's Judgment destroy speed. Right? Like that's what they do. And, like, you know what else really hurts speed? When you go for that big challenge and all of a sudden all their dudes have giant plus strength bonuses.
Well, I think we have a pretty good answer on this one. Let's move on to our next one from Andrew, who, this might be a little bit of a premature question, but he would like to know what the best shadow card is. So we don't have a ton to choose from. It seems like Scheme Acceptance the winner in the clubhouse, but I'll entertain other arguments.
Yeah, I think...
You have to accept Sandy.
No, how is that card better than, like, I don't know, whatever. How's that card better than Aegon? Are you kidding me?
Because
Aegon
of what
is
else
really
it enables.
Aegon's a solid answer.
Yeah, because of
but
what else
I
is
think
accepting answers.
I'm gonna to quote Roy and like 5 other people on this cast today. I'm gonna zag instead of zig on this question and go with the best Shadows card is Iron Bank will have its due. Card is money for Shadows, literally.
It is very good.
Yeah, the Schoenthal card.
Yeah, it's
That card makes
I
Sir
agree with
Robert
Sandy.
Strong work like real well, which is
and
fun.
Aegon, right? Bring him out of
Both. Anything with a high Shadows cost. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think Aegon probably in a vacuum is more powerful than the Septon, but if you have an environment without Old Town, but the presence of Old Town makes I think the Septon a little bit better than Aegon.
Septon's so cheap, you don't even have to bring him out. You don't have to put him into Shadows. Like, who cares? Just
Right. Yeah, it seems like kind of cheating to call him a Shadows card.
Yeah.
Really do a lot to Shadows.
Yeah. Well, why? Unless you need to trigger something coming out of shadows that doesn't really exist yet.
In fairness,
called
neither
Mace.
does Aegon. Aegon's an Ender's Play too, so they kind of mistemplated all these cards. But
Well, yeah, but entering a character that enters play and challenges and goes back to your hand is only good if you're playing Tyrell. only if you have Highgarden and Mace out. Otherwise, what's the point?
sure.
Yeah. Doubting Septa with Old Town. Doubting Septa, like the shadows
Sorry about-
use.
Scheming, not down.
Scheming Septa,
Septon.
sorry. Yeah, Scheming Septon, excuse me. Also has the added benefit of, like, the shadows use is that extra mace trigger, right?
Sure.
Like, it's got that extra mace trigger. It's got that extra gold if you realize you might need to cancel an event. It's like, it's got that extra gold if you're like, oh, I didn't see my high tower yet and I want some gold to trigger mace in the next 2 phases. Like, it's got all sorts of different janky little things to it that are just super strong. Like, it's the exact card. Like, if you were like, hey, Terrell, you can design any weenie to do a bunch of crap you want. That's
There's nothing else it would do,
hit,
yeah.
right? Like, it
Yeah.
does everything.
And
And it it draws an extra
Well,
card. Like,
to go
I
and
think-
to go
I
back to. Oh, go ahead, Sandy.
I was going to say, I would have picked Scheming Septon if it had cost like 5 instead of 2. Because then it combos with Highgarden Courtier, and you're just like, fuck you. Like, not only all of this shit, but also look at this +5 strength I have. But no, I don't. I'm not a like. It's a good card, and I think it says something about Tyrell that I'm actually unconvinced that it is that much better than the average in Tyrell.
So the thing that it's so important about that is, so one of the things people could do against, I mean, this goes to James's earlier question, right, about devaluing the challenges phase. So one of the ways you could beat Tyrell, or at least slow them down to give you time to execute your game plan, was put enough pressure on them in the challenges phase that they had to use a bunch of their tricky characters in one challenges phase to survive your pressure. And so they couldn't just like space out over a couple of turns their mace triggers. They had to like use two spies or Snapcaster Mage plus a spy to sort of survive your pressure. But now they can do that and every turn have a mace trigger thanks to the Septon and the gold and the card, right? It's that it devalues counterplay that was successful against Tyrell. That's what I think makes it so good. Like, Aegon is an amazing card in a vacuum, like particularly when you can DDoS people with Dario, is just nuts. Like, just nuts.
No.
But it doesn't, like that, like Targ doesn't have the support yet, like and the kind of synergy that just the Septon promotes. So.
Oh, you just made chat the happiest man in the world.
Alright.
All right. So
Sandy
from
doesn't
there,
get
let's
it.
go on to another set of new cards. Colin, resident rules expert Colin, would like to know
I
what
was like,
our
Circle of Green
impressions
Pulse isn't new.
of what our impressions are of the non-limited economy cards. It's early, but have you found them amazing, useful, mediocre, or bad? I would start out by pointing out that we've gotten the worst 2 houses economy cards, so it's kind of hard for anyone but Nick Hansen to tell.
Hey.
Didn't somebody
This-
play Stark well? Like Midwest? Wasn't there a tournament that Stark
I
won?
mean, there's the Faith Milton one, but
Faith
that was
Milton.
before.
That was
Before
before.
Yeah.
I played
okay.
a couple games against someone playing with the Stark ones, and it was like a cute little one stand. But kind of like what Chris said before. It's on the board. You can see it. It's like, okay, who's their best character? I'm gonna probably have to deal with them doing 2 challenges. Maybe I can bully them into defending one of those because then they'll swing back on attack. Like and they do it once. Like it's not that good. It's just not very good.
I think it's pretty good. I don't think it's great, but I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean the fact that you can stack them potentially on setup is pretty cool. Like just get them out there, but I don't think it's changing the fortunes of any of the houses that get them.
Yeah,
I think it's
I
just
agree
kind
with
of it's a good card, and I'm glad it's around, but I don't know that it's world beating.
So I do think it's interesting that you're right, it goes to the 2 houses that are the worst off, but it also goes to arguably 2 of the 3 houses that their 2-cost limited economy is kind of useless.
Garbage.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see what the Greyjoy one will be, because did we get the Greyjoy one? We did,
No,
right?
we haven't
It was
gotten any
foiled?
of the other ones. Have we?
Yeah, we got that was in. I'm pretty sure it was in one of the articles, right?
Yeah, it
It
was
was the refurbished Hulk.
So,
yeah.
But Jess, you've seen Nick's deck / Jesse's deck in action, and I've seen Jesse play it. Like, the non-limited economy does help that deck a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so the question is, for me at least, with the Bara, is like why is Bara? There's clearly a good Bara deck, so like why hasn't it done as much as it has? Like, Nick's done really well with it at 2 big tournaments, and Jesse did well at a big tournament with it. Like, the question is it just because the list isn't published? Is it like why have we not seen this sort of Bear archetype really explode, do you think?
I think it's the list isn't published, so obviously, I mean, people aren't that creative. And I just think in general, people just don't want to play Bara.
Right.
They know that Tyrell's good, they know that Martell's good, they know that Targ is okay. So
I think my reason is, I guess, similar to that, in that it's analogous to what happened with Night's Watch pre-builders, which is there were like 2 people that played with it and they did reasonably well with it, but no one else cared. Like, Tomas won like five like regionals or whatever big tournaments in a row with it, and I think who was playing it here? Was it Fred?
Fred was playing it.
Fred playing a lot of Night's Watch,
yeah. And he was doing reasonably. He made top 16, top 17 at Gen Con. Like, I think that, like,
but that was post builders,
okay.
by the way.
Oh, it was. Well, I mean, he was doing well.
He was a Night's Watch player for a long time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think that like there's a combination of it's a very technically difficult deck to play. I don't think even if the list was published, I'm not sure that like I would be able to take it and win with it. And 2, it's not exciting and fun. You don't get to do fun things. You just kind of screw your opponent. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a systemic problem with Bara. I think it's just that it's got a higher skill cap.
I like it.
I think we'd see more people play it though if and when that list does come out. People will play it.
Yeah.
And people are hungry to play Bara. They want to play it if they think they can win.
The way people played the Faith Militant for a couple of weeks, and then they realized it's not as good as Turtle and Martell and move on.
Yeah. But I think the Bara deck is also really vulnerable to breaking ties. So if you're in a meta that is heavy with breaking ties, because I know Nick had like tons of money on his Iron Bank, and it's just like, yeah.
Somebody do something about it.
Yeah, please play breaking ties. Get that thing away from here.
Yeah, that's pretty gross.
I thought Nick cut that
All right.
thing.
We have a question from Park S. It's a tournament question. We can move away from individual card evaluations or whatever. He is running the Knoxville, Tennessee regional in a couple weeks. I believe Sandy will be crashing along with Fred and maybe some other people. And
I'll
he says,
go, probably.
there you go.
Oh, really? So Jesse, Chris, and Jess, great. That just went from an easy win to a fuck you.
In one of the single worst places in the United States, Knoxville, Tennessee.
As this is a formal level event per Fantasy Flight guidelines, tournament leaders are not permitted to play. I can definitely see why, what with handling deck lists and needing to be available for rulings. So I'm planning on just overseeing the event. How do you all feel about this policy, and do you all generally practice it in the larger tournaments you run, either Fantasy Flight or fan-based? So basically, do you agree that tournament directors should not be playing their own tournaments, essentially?
No, I don't agree.
No.
I run some big tournaments and I don't play, but I also don't like. I wouldn't begrudge anyone playing. Like if they can run the tournament well and play, go for it. Like I really don't see a problem.
Yeah, and I think we see examples of this being done successfully. And the other thing about it is, like, yes, there's I guess some potential for bias or like you rule in your own favor, but I think somebody that did that would be outed pretty quickly by the community. I don't think that would stick around. And you see somebody like Ryan Jones, who granted he has a lot of help around him, but Thrones War is very stressful for Ryan, and he's basically said, like, I love playing in this tournament, but I'll never win it. Like, It's so stressful to have to put on multiple hats the day of, regardless of what kind of tournament it is, and try and go back and forth between working on pairings to doing rulings to actually figuring out what the hell you're doing in your own game. That I don't necessarily.
It takes. I think it takes like the reason I don't like playing Kubla is not because I think people would be mad. It's just because I couldn't do it. I wouldn't enjoy the games at all. But I like in the old days when Bruno used to run Kubla, he did it for a number of years. He would play and he would run it, and he would like pen and paper run it perfectly, like and win it sometimes, and like you'd watch him do it and you're just like, oh my god, like I just don't, like I don't have the mental energy to do it, like and
teacher versus English
yeah right. No way.
This is totally an argument for STEM.
Right, but honestly, like John would run a perfect tournament, like there would be no complaints because all the pairings made sense and all the results would work out, and like he would just crush his opponent in 25 minutes and then like get to working on the tournament, no problem. But I just can't do that. Once my brain's split, I'm not doing either thing very well. So I think it depends on the TO, and if the TO can demonstrate that they can do it successfully and people watch them do it and they're like, oh man, what a great run tournament, and they played and perfect, like fine, do it. I think it's a dumb rule, but whatever.
And
yeah, it's dumb.
So I think it'd be oh, go ahead.
The only person here who's actually run a tournament and play, except Jess, have you run any of the indie tournaments, or does Chris normally do that?
Chris usually runs them.
Yeah, like who's both run a tournament that's like 50-some people and played at it. And like the easiest solution to this problem is, if you're worried about it, is just what I do is pick 2 players who know the rules, and they're your co-judges. For any game that's not your game, you make rulings, and if you need help, you can ask those 2 people if something's complicated or obscure. If it's your game that it ends up being, those 2 people make the decision, and I've never heard someone complain about that. I've never like, you know what, I was brought up in tournament organized by Dan Struhall and Dave Stroms, and that's what they did, right? And then when I was coming up, I was the 3rd person in there, and that's just the way it operates. And like that's usually every fan run event that I've had organizers that play. That's usually what happens. But it's really exhausting though to do it. Like it is, like Red Saturday last year, I like wanted to die at the end of Red Saturday. Like it was very exhausting. It was very like, and particularly like it. So I can definitely see why FFG does that. Maybe for just the like, besides just the tournament transparency, it's really tiring. And I'm not going to play right now at Thronetoberfest because it's going to be like, I don't know how Ryan does it. Ryan said to me that he may give up doing the kingship in future Thrones Wars and maybe just play because it's so exhausting. Like there's just like lots of different, like it's just really exhausting to run large tournaments and play at the same time. So like my advice to Parker would be, if like, what's your stamina level? Like if you feel comfortable running the tournament and doing it, then go ahead. Like, I mean, obviously the FFG official rules, like you are running an official FFG event, so the person who, like the internal person to me says, like, I gotta follow the formal rules. So at dance this past year, last 2 dances that were official FFG, I didn't play. I just ran the tournaments. And same will be for the Philadelphia tournament, unless we can work something out with the store that I feel comfortable with, where they can run it. Yeah, so that would be my advice. But like, I may not play in Red Saturday this year, which would break my heart a little bit. But if we have 60 or 70 people,
that's going to be tough.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do if I can do that in a way that I feel good. Although I do have a first round bye, and most of the issues come up in the first round.
Yeah.
And so it's easy, you know, after that first round, everything's sort of set. Usually, most things kind of work themselves out in the later rounds. So
the nightmare scenario is just your game going long, right? Like you're the one who time is happening. Like you've got to do matchups, right? You haven't entered stuff. It's like, oh, then but you can grab someone and say, hey, here, if you're organized, you say, here's the slips. Can you start entering, right? And then you just say, hey, everyone, check your matchups, make sure. Okay, let's go.
I have in one store championship that we had a complicated issue. Like I just conceded to my opponent. I was just like, okay, like I have to do this, so. I just conceded and was like, I'm going to take care of this tournament issue, because at the end of the day, if I am the chief organizer, what matters is my players' experience more so than like me winning the tournament. I mean, me winning the tournament's sweet, but you know, at the end of the day, if I'm running the event, I would rather someone be like, oh, Roy put him, you know, the tournament ahead of him playing, because that's what really matters to me is the players' experience, because they came all the way.
I would actually, I have not run any tournament, and I actively avoid any sort of responsibility at tournaments.
This is true.
Maybe I'm not the best person to answer this, but I think that it's highly dependent on the size of the tournament. I think that if you're running a local tournament with 12 people or whatever, like it doesn't, you can play or you can not play, and it won't make a huge difference. If there is a judge call, hopefully there's at least one other person that you can coordinate with. On the other hand, if you're running a tournament with 50 people, like it's unlikely that you'll be able to do it without any help. And so if you have help, then distribute the load evenly so that you can play. I don't know. Like in Knoxville, for example, it looks like we might have like 25 people. Who knows? In which case,
I want to go that high. Jesus.
Well, I mean, like it's you, Jesse, Chris, me, Fred. I know at least a couple
Right.
of
We don't need to list everyone. It'll be a bunch of people. Got it.
Right. Anyway, my point is there's other people that can help with the load, and in terms of like organizing or making sure that results are entered or whatever, and like you should be able to play if you feel like you want to, or if you feels like there's going to be a bye otherwise or whatever. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Cool. Thank you for the question, Parker. There's our thoughts. We have one last question from James, who would like to know.
I'm the CCG one. I pulled
We're
up
not
all the
doing the
CCG
CCG one. We're definitely not doing Will's CCG.
Wait, CCG question. You've got my attention.
You can do that on the white book if you'd like. James would like to know if you were making a Tormund Giantsbane card, what would it be? So this is our last question for the night. So make it good, folks.
So
No,
I suggest the
first of all-
person who has a card design decides Tormund Giantsbane.
I mean, the person with the card design has some friends who probably look more like Tormund than he does. So,
I'm not saying you have to. That's not what I was suggesting. Just
I know.
since you can actually get this made, I think your opinion matters most.
I've been too busy reading the questions to actually think about this one. I would say that as a Giantsbane, it would definitely have to have it intimidate, regardless of what it did. I wouldn't mind seeing it have an intrigue icon because Tormund's kind of a sneaky fella.
He's a survivor. Hey, he's a survivor.
Good with the ladies, I hear. So those are my thoughts on it. Someone else more creative, go.
You're the man with the card design. You should be the most creative of all of us.
That's why it's not a published card design.
Steal a magic card design. Just
I'm
5 for
trying
5
to.
icon intimidate.
Something to bring. I mean, I would want him to be something to bring the wildling theme together a little bit, right? Something that maybe spreads some benefit to any wildling characters that are in play. Whether it's some ambush mechanic or some extra intimidate mechanic, like something to bring the wildlings together. I think wildlings need a little bit of love in our game right now, and who better to do it than the ultimate love spreader, Tormund. I would like to see him do that.
Cool. Anybody else?
Okay. Yeah, so I think the best CCG agenda to be reprinted should be.
Not the stream.
Go ahead.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of
Twice
another
in 2
episode of
weeks. It's
Second
crazy.
Son. Should we take up Will's question as one final? Final.
I think there are a bunch of us that know the CCG cards. Sid, you've played CCG.
Oh,
right?
I know the agenda, and it'll even revitalize a house that's in dire straits right now. We bring back Brothers of War out of Baratheon.
So the question for those, if we're gonna do this, let's read Will's.
Yeah,
question.
let's do it. Yeah, let's
The
go.
question is, if you were gonna bring back a CCG agenda, what agenda is it, and why would it be Brothers at War? Which Sid is about to tell you what
All
it
right.
did.
Brothers at War allowed you to run 2 decks. Each deck was 30 card max, and you could not include more than 1 copy of a card by name in either deck, right? So you could run 2x of a card, but they would have to be split across decks. So what people figured out right away is you could have kind of an early game deck, and then you'd kick into gear with like your mid-late game deck, and it allowed you to kind of tier your strategy. And people by the end were doing really cool things with it, where they would start with like, you'd obviously want good setup stuff in your first deck. Maybe you'd even leave events out and hit like mid game with those real powerful events and big bomb characters later. It allowed you to play the game differently. I'm not sure how it would work with like decking now, if you had to deck both decks or if you could deck one and then they would lose. You'd have to figure out how to fit it in with the rules. But it was a really cool, different agenda. that was fun to play with, and it was powerful without being just broken. You didn't be like, oh great, a brothers deck, I'm gonna lose. You knew you were in for something that you'd have to pay attention to because it was gonna get wild.
Were there any like super rare agendas in the CCG?
Super rare? Oh, like stuff that no one played?
Were
No,
most
like
of the agendas printed
like-
at Rare, Sid?
No. Most agendas were super easy to acquire. Yeah, they were like.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Well, wait, were they super easy to acquire because they were cheap rares, or were they super easy to acquire?
They
'cause were
weren't
printed
rares.
common
They
or
were never
uncommon?
rares. Yeah, I don't
never
think
rares.
any agenda was ever rare. They would always like show up in starter decks. You'd get them. Yeah, I think there were common, maybe uncommons. I think there were uncommons for the most part. I'd have to look up and see, but I don't think there was a rare agenda. I'm almost positive there wasn't.
I actually just wanted this to go into a segue to talk about the design space that we still have open, like in terms of what the cool things they did in the CCG agendas were and how we could adapt some of that. I mean, there were the
That's a whole
boring
other
ones.
episode, man.
No, I know. Just like real quick, like I like the Greyjoy one, which was you can't include non-loyal character, you cannot include neutral characters or locations, but you can have 45 cards in your deck,
Yeah.
which is hilarious. Like that's
That
just
would be
crazy.
nuts.
super busted.
That would be Stark, right?
Yeah.
That would have to be Stark.
Well,
That's their theme.
So we have to be brutally honest here, though. Like FFG has thrown out the faction-only agenda design space, right? Like
Right.
every signal as a designers that they can possibly do. The fact that there's faction
I mean,
boxes
range,
and they
right?
have not issued faction-only agendas.
Yeah, it's pretty disappointing to be honest. That I miss a lot, and I also miss like dual house characters. I think there's a lot of design space there that they've specifically stayed away from that I'm not really happy with.
We had those cool locations, which were all 6 houses at 1.2, which is really interesting, and they all did kind of cool
the
things.
Kingdom.
Yeah, they interacted with
Yeah.
plots. Like they were cool
Shadow.
locations.
What was that? Bay of Ice?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
yeah.
the-
Bay of Ice,
And the
Kingdom of
kingdom cycle,
Shadows.
right? Kingdom of blah blah blah.
Mhm, yeah.
The different cities and stuff. Yeah. And they
Right.
had that cool interaction that they weren't technically neutral cards, right? They were just
Right.
all the
They were
factions.
all houses,
Yeah.
so they
Yeah.
triggered cast one of the rock and anything that said the house sigil. You could also there were a lot of cards, a lot more than there are now, that said if you're only running cards of X house, and they counted for that. So they helped those Stark decks that had all the old Bear Island and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna end us here with my pick for the CCG agenda. The Twins.
Oh yeah.
You need 5 additional power to win the game, but you can play with up to 4 copies of any card in your deck, or 5 copies if it's a House of A character.
That's right.
Make it happen, FFG.
Endless phrase. Endless
Make-
phrase.
That's like pure capitalist money grab there, right? Because you got to buy
Totally
a whole
is.
bunch extra. You got to get
Oh,
that
yeah.
4th chapter pack. They should make it an
Mhm.
evergreen agenda to force the competitive players to buy additional packs. So
Maybe that's my chant card. Ooh, I like
there
it.
you go.
Bring
But then
it
you won't get your
back.
face on it. So Chris, you'll just have to win another card design, and then you can do one without your face on it, and then you'll
Which
have one.
means just win worlds at this point.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
too real.
Jesus.
All right, so I guess that brings us to the end of the episode, unless anybody has anything. So Jess, do you have anything you want to promote? Is there anything coming up in Indie or
Just
in your
something
community
you want
out
to
there?
say.
Or something you want to say?
Uh, There's nothing coming up in Indy. I don't think our regional is until after Gen Con, like a week or two before Nationals, I think. But I'll be at the Michigan Regional probably, and then Knoxville, and just hitting up all the regionals. Maybe I'll win one eventually. So
He'll get there.
Is there?
I have faith.
Are there? What? So you might go to Michigan this weekend? Is that this
Yeah.
weekend?
yeah.
Anyone else going to a tournament this weekend?
Alec comes
No.
back on Saturday, so I
Sorry.
There is one in DC, and I will be in DC. But I will
Really?
not be attending.
That's not. Oh
unfortunately.
yeah, that is this weekend. Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
You're not going to the regional, even though you're going to be in DC.
I'm going to be protesting.
Oh, that's
Nice.
right. The protests are on Saturday. That's right. Yeah. So
He'll have his sign, and he'll be checking Jousting Pavilion just to make sure.
Lexington Regional
What's going on?
apparently is this weekend.
yeah. So
Oh, really?
Glazer's
Washington
next
regional.
regional
Oh, Glazer.
is Philadelphia
Maybe.
on
What?
Maybe.
July
He's vacillating.
21st.
Is
I-
that the kill in the Kingswood?
It is, and there is sweet art that we got for our custom alt art card that we will be sharing soon.
I think I've seen that, right? Have I
Yeah,
seen it?
Mike might have put it in a shared chat. Yeah,
I have
it's super
yet
sweet.
to convince my wife, so I will try. I mean, Glazer's last event of this season will be the Fracas,
Fracas.
right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No,
After
the last
Gen
one
Con.
this season, but there's also Gen Con between now and then.
I
That's-
want to
yeah,
know
that's
why isn't Sandy flying the whole cast out for it? I think that should be.
Yeah.
I
You
feel
guys
like
need to-
why
you
is
need
just
to buy-
one? Like what's going on here?
You need to buy more Amazon products. Like if
I buy a
Amazon-
ton.
Amazon
Oh my
products,
god.
You could probably look me up.
A
I buy
ton.
tons of Amazon.
Yeah. Do we need
I
to
literally went to any
account
shopping.
history? Do
I
you
got the
need my
receipt.
account history, Sandy?
Like,
Is that what
Sandy
you
can
need?
sleep on us all he wants.
Is that what you need? What's the credit? What's the
I-
system of earning these credits? Just tell me.
I think if Amazon stock hits like 3,500 or so, then I can probably afford to buy everybody a ticket.
When
to-
everyone wants to watch their $1 billion Lord of the Rings TV show, then we'll.
Oh, there you go. Mhm.
There's a bunch of really good stuff in development at Amazon, like Lord of the Rings, yes, but also Wheel of Time is in development.
Really?
Up on Sandy.
Wait, you said good stuff, and then you said Wheel of Time. What?
They're gonna shrink it into 3 seasons. Let's be fair.
Chris, do you have anything else before we go?
No, not really. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for the questions. Hopefully, this was a cool episode, and people want to send us more questions for later.
Sid, anything?
Yeah, I'll give a quick plug. The first stop on the Western Championship Circuit is coming up July 14th. Still a ways away, but it's the SAC of Atlanta Sport in LA. So just look it up, or maybe I'll put a link when we eventually post this video. If you guys are interested, come to LA. I think most of SoCal will be there. We kind of tried to pick a weekend that could work for most people. So it'll be fun. We'll be kicking off. You'll get your first alt art of the Weapons of Westeros faction card series. So fittingly, it's the SAC of Lannisport, and you'll get the Greyjoy axe, since they were responsible for that particular sacking. It'll be fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, my final plug is again what I told you, that Glazer will be coming, hopefully, and I believe maybe Jesse Carpenter will be coming, and a few other luminaries of the community will be coming to the Philadelphia Regional on July
Jess Thompson,
20th.
you in? You in, JT?
I don't know. We'll see.
Let's go.
And
Get in
then,
that car.
so our next episode of this show, though, will be July 10th, and then that means that we only have 2 more episodes before Gen Con, before the main event for this cast, except for Sid. So, you know, and this is going to be a very lit Gen Con, I believe. So
What the fuck has Lab been doing awake?
Is it going to be lit AF?
it will be lit AF, mate. Broheem. So anyway, on that happy note, ladies, gentlemen, and bros, have a wonderful rest of your week.
Yay.
Cut the stream, Sid.
Oh, okay. I was in the middle of typing a comment. I was answering
are we
Buzz.
still live? Because I want
live?
to say one more thing.
Okay, say it, go.
So, at Casablanca on the Friday night of Gen Con will be the Second Son's official party. Be there.
The official party.
I mean, we had an official party at World Save.
We did. It was the
official
party
is
of
wherever
the
fuck
weekend.
I am. Let's be real.
Well, we will be at Casablanca because that's also going to be day 3 of my bachelor party. So
There you go. Whoa, your
Well, not
bachelor
ready
party
for
is
your
lasting
bachelor.
3 days.
it's the whole
She
Gen
goes ham, as the kids say.
He just gets to claim